Ladies and gentlemen, please stay tuned for a live television first as we attempt to commune with the devil, but not before a word from our sponsors.
Hello and welcome back to Dark Static, a podcast where we discuss and chronicle everything found footage in analog horror media. I'm your host, Alex Schiffer, and tonight with me always is Zach.
Hello, it's me, Zach Gilbert Mahoney.
And on this episode, we're talking about Late Night with the Devil, the latest film to hit Shudder, directed by Cameron and Colin Cairneys, and starring David Dastmalchian. This movie is another recent movie. I know last week we talked about Blair Witch, and we said we were going to talk about the one of two movies, the Blair Witch 2016 legacy sequel or whatever, and or this latest film that just came out. And in the meantime, this film hit Shudder, and a lot of people have been talking about it, revisiting it, and yeah, it's become a big talking point now in the horror space for good reason and for not so good reasons. And we'll get on to why all that is in just a moment. But this is a very interesting film to talk about for the show. I've heard about it since the beginning of the year. And I've just been really dying to watch it. And I did miss this in theaters when it came out, but I've been watching it. I've watched it multiple times now on Shudder, and I think it's a really interesting thing to discuss. This is, again, Late Night with the Devil. And it's one of these movies that we're going to talk about that's, it is described as found footage, but the setup for it is way less conventional than what you think in, found footage media. The films that we've been talking about so far on the show, like obviously we talked about last week, was the Blair Witch Project, Outwaters. Those films are, first person POV, found footage, the classic setup. And I think the ways in which this film tackles the genre is quite unique, and I don't think we're going to get something like this for a very long time. But yeah, this is Late Night with the Devil, and you've probably heard about it all over the internet for a variety of reasons. One of which I guess. Yeah, what do you say, Zach? Should we tackle the AI thing or what? Should we get that out of the way? Because I really want to talk about the film, and I feel like it's just going to be hovering over us throughout the whole episode until we get into it proper.
I feel like it makes sense to cover it now because it's also like it's kind of interspersed right throughout the movie. So
what
it would have to be it would have to be something we take.
Yeah. So what these are? I mean, for the most part, this movie's gotten very, very good press. And then all of a sudden, like out of the blue, one day, there's a guy on Twitter, and he posted a Letterboxd review that was like, how is everyone missing this AI shit that's in this movie? And people were like, what? AI, really? We hadn't seen these screenshots. They hadn't been in any trailers or anything like that. And when we talk about it, it's kind of non-consequential, but it is a concern because, listen, like we need a scale for AI use in film. And I feel like it's maybe a good thing that we have this movie that implements it in a pretty controversial way, because now we kind of know how to, gauge whatever the next film is that decides to use AI.
I think that's a good way to put it. It's like, okay, you're setting a scale because, like, my perspective on AI is like most things when they're introduced into the way we have structured society, which is that it is like this thing that can be really cool and really useful as a tool. That's not the way that a bunch of people are going to use it, and that is what people are taking offense to with AI. You know, like you have this application that is like, okay, on the one hand, it's great for something like law, right? Because you can technically represent yourself. Most people just don't do that because they don't understand the law. Well, if the difference is just knowledge, I can step in and handle that for you. That's just it going through all of the legal knowledge that it needs to properly hand you your defense or whatever, right? So stuff like that, it's like, oh, that's actually great. That makes like public defense and stuff like that way more accessible and cheap. Immediately what it's being used for is in
the arts.
yeah, in the arts is to replace the artist, is to replace workers. So you had stuff like the VFX artists, or the VFX art that Marvel used to create like an intro for one of their Disney Plus
Yeah,
shows
that was like,
apparently looked
it looked terrible.
awful.
Well, that was the thing where it's like that kind of, I mean, Late Night with the Devil isn't the first, major thing to, and again, this isn't really even a major film. This is an independent project. It is kind of like the first litmus to like gauge like where AI usage in film is acceptable. And it wasn't even the first. They used it in that Marvel show, but no one gave a fuck about that Marvel show because it was a Marvel show. So who really cares? So that's kind of the, the reason why it wasn't really heavily discussed that much, because we have a different bar for indie film. We expect something.
It's also just
I
like
always talk
really,
about. Yeah, go ahead.
it's just really hard to know too, like what, like I think the other inherent, so there's the aspect of losing jobs, which is what sucks with the Marvel thing, right? Is like
Yeah.
they would have hired VFX artists to do that. But I think with this indie thing, that's not as big a deal because it's like, oh, well, this isn't, it's kind of cool that there's this thing that is to help save on cash. I think the issue is like, did this art steal other people's like property, basically, like intellectual property or art or whatever, in order to generate the images that it made? That's the thing with the Marvel show. I'm sure with the Marvel show, they own all the imagery of those heroes and stuff, so they probably can just feed a bunch of shit into it that like,
Yeah, and honestly, how different
right, as
is
Marvel, as Disney.
than what they like already put out?
Yeah,
How different?
just
How
sort
different
of
is that really? That's why
regurgitating
no one really gave
and
a
then
fuck. 'Cause it's
swallowing
like,
it
oh yeah,
back
this
down.
looks as shitty as all this other shit looks. But anyway, like I the thing is, like, I've been on here on these past couple episodes talking about the indie spirit and DIY nature of found footage horror films. And for this film to just kind of carelessly have some very weak AI art usage when they could have easily hired, some kind of artist to do these little slides. I think that says something.
Yeah, it feels really like, I mean, I'm actually looking at a quote from, God, I've always just said Dalmatian, David Dastmalchian.
Yeah, he did like an interview talking about it. I saw.
I think that is kind of how I feel about it. It's like, it's good to have the conversation. It's an important conversation. For this movie in particular, it's like, yeah, but like it is 3 images in like, if you took those images out, it would barely change the movie that they made. Yeah, it's still like a complete film.
And I guess at the South by Southwest screening, they weren't even there. So there is a version of this film without them.
Yeah, I mean, it's so small. It's so inconsequent, like something you could just like,
I mean, it's
take out and swap with something else.
And it's not like, oh, they're just there for a couple seconds, it doesn't matter. And
it adds to it.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen people argue that it's like, oh, they're just there for a couple seconds, it doesn't really matter that much. And it's like, yeah, to a point, but like when they come up now, they obviously like, they do suck. Like, they don't look good in the film, and we'll talk about it when we're actually discussing the film. But like, it's not even that it's like the usage of AI art is bad. It's bad because it also looks bad, and then the people
it's easy to identify.
It's so easy to identify, like the hands, and then the pumpkins and that one photo are like really warped and wrong. It's like, especially when you're doing a period piece, it's like, yeah, all this doesn't bode very well for me. Well, I mean, that's kind of the biggest offense to me. It's like, yeah, you're trying to accomplish, a certain mood, and it's like, oh yeah, you kind of fail in that one front, even if it does last for only a few seconds. It's still immersion breaking when all is said and done. So yeah, I feel like we have to get the AI shit out of the way because there is more to this film that we want to discuss. And that was kind of the most controversial part of it. I don't really want to discuss it that much further. There's been AI tools in, editing and sound production programs for years now, and for the most part, they're very helpful, but generative AI is different, and I don't really want it anywhere near our beloved films, especially our horror found footage films that we love so much here on Dark Static. But yeah, this is also another first for Dark Static. This is the first film that we're going to be talking about on this show that has a recognizable actor in it. This is not of a genre that has a ton of star power. And not to say that David Dastmalchian has a ton of star power, but he is a face that you recognize. And some people were seeing this film for him. And it's funny. It's like you go to a found footage movie.
You're talking about me?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Zach.
So you're talking about me.
Zach, #1 David Dastmalchian fan. We'll see anything that he's been in. But yeah, usually it goes against the found footage format to have like a noticeable, a recognizable actor in a found footage movie, especially that one that's a period piece. Could be seen as immersion breaking, but I think this is all part of the fun, and David Dastmalchian is a fine actor, and I loved pretty much everything that he's been in so far. I mean, he's a funny guy to see in movies sometimes. I remember seeing The Dark Knight, and he had this like really small role, and he had like one or two lines, like. And then, for some reason, that guy and that guy's face has always stuck out to me. And then I forgot what I saw him in next, but I think it was Blade Runner 2049, where he's just like, it's a very small role too, but it's like, wait, that guy's from that. It's like, are we? And it's like recognizing a character actor. And I think David Dastmalchian would consider himself a character actor, but I'm not sure.
He obviously he crushed in like Suicide Squad movie, which is like a starring role.
Yeah, he's the polka dot man. And he was one of the best parts about that movie.
Yeah, he was one of the, I think secretly like kind of the quiet MVP of the movie.
And now we finally have like kind of like a star vehicle, I guess, for this guy, which and it's funny because it just happens to be a found footage movie where you're supposed to believe that it really happened, but it's like, here's this actor that it's like, okay, cool. This isn't the first time we'll be recognizing actors in a found footage film, but it's just a funny thing that you see sometimes. But I think for what the vibe that this film goes for, it's fun and it works, and he's fun. He's a fun actor to watch. I find his face funny. I find his performance funny. The cadence of his voice is very captivating, as you'll see during this film. But yeah, a little bit more background about these guys in charge. The people that made this movie, Cameron and Colin Cairns. They're a brother duo. They haven't made a ton so far. They've have a pretty short catalog of on-demand films. Really, their first major picture that they've made. They've also made some shorts too. And what inspired them to make this film? They have a quote here. They've said that in the 70s and 80s, there was something slightly dangerous about late night TV. Talk shows in particular were a window into some strange adult world. We thought combining that changed live-to-air atmosphere with the supernatural could make for a uniquely frightening film experience. So that was kind of their like inspiration. And when I heard about this film, Late Night with the Devil, and see them take the late night TV concept and run with it into a horror film, something that I've seen something like this before done in a similar film called Ghost Watch, which is a film that we actually might talk about. I was thinking about covering that very early on and kind of skipped over it. But now that this film's come out, I might go to revisit it. Maybe after our Blair Witch episode, we'll tackle Ghost Watch and kind of compare the two. But I do love the concept of like late night TV gone wrong. I like the concept of any live TV gone wrong, honestly.
So I am weirdly, as I've grown older, I realize like compared to a lot of my friends, I did not watch a lot of like live TV. Like in any format. Like I was way more of like a catching movies when they were on,
Yeah.
watching TV shows, specifically cartoons when I was younger, but then like Sci-Fi Channel, that kind of stuff, Fox as I grew up. But like I never really tuned in for like the comedy late night shows.
Mhm.
So I kind of had to catch up with like a lot of who those figures were when I hit like college and stuff. So I honestly like it's been a periphery. I understand what it is, but it's
Yeah, you
never
can
really been like my thing.
yeah, you can like point your finger to it, but you can't say that you've ever, you have any kind of like attachment to it or any kind of history with it.
Yeah, and this is obviously like a very specific era of the late night TV stuff, which is
Yeah.
it's like a slightly different flavor than what we have today, which is like somehow weirdly more sanitized,
Yeah, way more
even
sanitized.
though the other stuff is during an era where you think it would be more sanitized.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean I've absorbed a lot of it more so like recently. I don't have a ton of history with it. I do understand the feeling of like waking up late at night and like
Turning it on.
something being on the TV that you would never have watched, like some infomercial or something like that, which I feel like is adjacent to like the late
Yeah.
night TV experience. Something to watch while you're kind of like in bed. Like that's literally to this day how my mom absorbs late night TV. It's like in bed falling asleep and it's on, you know?
Yeah, I think that's how
But
it's mostly meant to be consumed, with how just clean it is. Like, I don't know
yeah,
who's
like
I don't like for the intended audience, you don't expect them to stay up that long, you know? That's how I always thought about.
yeah, they got to get to their 9 to 5.
Yeah. But
It's very strange. If it was like this type of late night television, I would stay up for this.
I would watch the shit
This
out
I
of
would be
this.
watching. Oh my God.
Well,
Are you kidding me? I mean,
I would
he had a
love
great idea.
He did. I would fucking love a new high profile like late night talk show, but specifically for the occult. And like they have hypnotists and paranormal investigators on to talk about all the shit. Oh, that would be something that would be on the I'm trying to think of like live TV. Last time I talked about the Chill channel. But now that would probably go on
Right.
something like Shudder or something, which
Yeah.
untapped potential with that.
There is, I guess I can talk more about this like later as the movie goes on.
Yeah.
But there is stuff like this that I feel like doesn't happen as much anymore, but it did happen early 2000s, I want to say. I think there's a good reason why people don't do it anymore. But yeah, I mean, I'll probably bring it up again
Yeah.
once we like get to the actual
Once we
events
get
of the
to the
movie.
film,
But
yeah. So I remember watching a few different late night shows, mostly because the TV was always on in my house, and my dad just kind of watched whatever, and we watched what he watched. And sometimes a late night show would come on, and one that always stuck out to me was Conan O'Brien. Before he got fucked over by the network, his show was fucking hilarious, genuinely hilarious. And they even played, I remember there was I can't remember if this is actually real or not, or I'm remembering this wrong, but Conan O'Brien's show used to have clips played like on daytime TV too, like on the weekends. Some channel played them, like the highlights of Conan O'Brien's show, and they're always great. But other than that, Craig Ferguson, maybe, like I really liked Craig Ferguson's show. I think he was funny. And I don't know if you can count the Colbert Report or Daily Show or anything like that, but
Okay, that stuff I do have experience with.
Yeah,
Those
I
two
watched
were the
those
ones, but they weren't
way
really
more.
late night.
No. And what is like with many things, I think just late night is a thing that we just kind of hold on to. It's kind of a relic.
Yeah.
And I think this film kind of taps into that a little bit. What this actually reminds me of more is, and this is going to sound very odd, but bear with me for where I'm going with this. But I used to listen to this guy called Art Bell. He had this show on the radio, and you can listen to these clips on YouTube. He and kind of just like the main character of this film, he was a radio host. He delved into the occult, and I know that, and those are kind of the vibes that I get from Jack Delroy's show in the film, and the kind of things that he shows off are kind of like things that you would hear with Art Bell and his show. He was one of the first people I saw that were actually talking about like sleep paralysis and shadow people and like taking that shit seriously. That's something that kind of reminded me of, what Night Owls tries to do in this episode. And this is just like a silly, I know they're doing like a silly Halloween special, but I used to see a ton of stuff like, we're going to have a psychic on, here's this illusionist. I used to see that stuff on TV sometimes. We had a huge thing with mediums at one point, in not even in late night TV. That was more like a daytime TV thing, was psychics. And there's a psychic in this film that we'll talk about. I really like their role here. But getting on more to the film, I mean, I'm just dying to talk about what happens in the film. But a couple things I want to touch on first. So this film was all shot in Melbourne, Australia. These Australian directors. A lot of good horror coming out of Australia. If you've seen Talk to Me, that's also a Australian brother duo. They're just shipping these guys out here. That's fantastic. And again, initially it premiered at South by Southwest in 2023. It's part of the Midnighters section where the AI the AI slides were not present. It also screened at the Sydney Film Festival until it was picked up officially by IFC Films and Shudder. Opened in March, opened to about just over 1,000 theaters, earning $2.8 million, and making it one of the best openings for IFC Films. And quite notably, it grossed $666,666 on its third day. Wow, cool. Spooky, huh? It finished seventh. Yeah.
Maybe that's the devil working through it.
It's the devil. It's the number of the beast. And it finished seventh at the domestic box office. Guys, go see your horror films. They're back. They're making money. They don't cost that much to make. I couldn't find what the official budget of this film was, but the only thing I saw is they spent $150,000 on VFX, which is not that much at all for a modern studio film at all. It's funny that they spent that much on VFX and still decided to use those AI slides. It's just funny.
Yeah.
But right now, I just want to get into our overall likes and dislikes, our overall thoughts on the film. And Zach, I'll start with you. What did you think of Late Night with the Devil? What are your overall thoughts?
I liked it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for listening.
Good night, everybody. So the further you get into this movie, so the setup we're about to see, I think, is really good.
Mm-hmm.
And the further you get in, the more it kind of struck me that this was like watching a solid, like, fun creep show bit, but instead of a short, it was.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Are you familiar with Creep Show?
Yeah, I love
Creep Show. It's an anthology film.
I've seen Creep Show.
Or an EQ Comics type thing, like Tales from the Crypt.
Oh, yeah.
That type of thing, like an old horror comic adaptation or something like that. There's just something about it. It's pulpy. It's very pulpy. It's not trying to convince you.
Yes.
that what you're seeing is real. And I think that is like one, honestly, like we've skipped ahead in the timeline here a bit from like, we prior to this we were going a bit more chronologically, but like this to me is like a taste of like what found footage movies are like today. I mean, we've had the Outwaters and Skinamarink, which are very different. They're doing their own thing. Those are a little bit more art house. Skinamarink is very experimental. But as far as like just a regular old narrative, this is the point in found footage where like movies are just like they aren't trying to convince you that the footage is real anymore.
Yeah.
And that allows them to have more fun with the premise, more to allow the pulp to just kind of take over. And honestly, like I kind of prefer that route because at this point we're past into the naturalism of these things, and so the found footage becomes kind of a hook to just have a different style, a different approach towards
where it's just a framing device,
story basically.
Nothing else. It introduces you to the concept and then just kind of rolls however it wants to, and it doesn't need to remind you of that really ever again.
Yeah, it becomes style, honestly. It just becomes like a piece of stylization. And so yeah, I had a lot of fun with it. Like it didn't blow my mind.
Yeah.
It wasn't, I think maybe my expectations were set a little high. Ultimately it's like not, it's not my favorite thing. It's not even my favorite thing on Shudder, like it's, but
there's so many great things on Shudder.
I mean, you can't go wrong with it. Like it's like, hey, it's a good time. It's like a solid fun.
At best, it can be like a yearly Halloween watch. It is a very good Halloween movie.
Yes, it's a great like low stakes. You're not gonna be like, it's not gonna fuck up your day like Hereditary or something like that. It is an easy, accessible movie with some good like gore moments and yeah.
It's a fun movie to rewatch with friends who haven't seen it yet, and you're like, oh, I can't wait. I'm gonna have fun with this every time, and have fun watching their reactions to it.
Exactly.
Yeah, and this maybe you're expecting this is the part of the show where I disagree with Zach and way more positive about a recent movie that came out. I'm not. I mostly agree with Zach. I might actually be the low guy on this film. Actually,
what?
I don't think it's.
We've switched
roles. I really liked this movie a lot. I did. For large portions of this film, I was completely immersed, even with some of the betrayal of the premise a bit. I didn't mind, and I was just kind of watching a good movie, just like we would watch any other good movie. But then there are some parts I think that are a little too that kind of test you a little bit more than you'd want to. I really liked the concept of this film, and I don't think it actually goes far enough with that concept. Because throughout the movie, I was just kind of thinking of different ways they could tackle things. Not to say that the way that they executed, any of these moments are bad, but they don't seem that thought through. The quick examples I can give right now were the behind the scenes sections that I think are just a little too plain, and then there's the back half of the film. Or not even the back half. There's the big climax that's kind of just a CGI fun fest, and I didn't feel satisfied with it. And then there's the ending, which completely take me out of the film, out of my enjoyment of the film. And I know you said it's not trying to really
fan of the ending.
It's not, and it's like I said, it's like you said, like they're not trying to convince you of anything, but I at least want them to try and not just say, hey, fuck it, it's not real, it's just a film. But it's like, but you did such a good job of of convincing me that this is real. Not that this is real, but like you're doing a good job of like being confident in yourself, and you kind of just throw that out and be like, fuck it, we're gonna do this thing instead. And while it might be narratively satisfying to the main character, I didn't feel that satisfied as a viewer, even though I mostly walked away with positive thoughts about Late Night with the Devil. It didn't give me exactly, not that it didn't give me exactly what I wanted, but I just think that with the concept that it had, could have taken it a bit further. With that said, though, I mean, this film is led by great performances. Like probably some of the best performances you'll see in a found footage film. David Dastmalchian, obviously, like I don't think a lot needs to be said about him. He is fantastic. He's so fun to watch. He's part of like that pulp. He just screamed. I don't know why, but like I think he should be a horror icon.
Yeah, I mean, he did. I remember he hosted Fangoria's like
he did the Chainsaw Awards, right?
Like of the Chainsaw Awards, yeah, Chainsaw 1 year,
Awards? Yeah. So I want to see that guy in more horror stuff.
I don't know. From what I know about him, seems like something he might enjoy. He's like super into comics and stuff.
Yeah, he seems to be a cool guy. Like, and it's one of those things where it's like the character he might be playing is might be kind of scummy, but goddamn, like he's just so charming. Like, he's just such a likable actor that you just can't stop watching him. But it's not even just him. It's the guy that plays Gus is very good. The guy that plays Leo, the producer, is awesome. And the girl that plays Lily is fantastic, actually. And it's one of those things where it's like, it's a child actor, creepy kid actor. How good can they possibly be? But it's like, it's something that we've seen before, but it's like, this kind of sets a high bar for it. Honestly, this kind of sets a new standard. This is a very creepy child. And I liked the performance of Lily quite a bit. I like everything about the actual talk show about night owls. I think is really really charming, and they do a good job convincing you that this is like a kind of a more minuscule show, like a competitor to the Johnny Carson show, which was like one of the only talk shows around at that point, late night talk shows around at that point. And this could have been a more of a forgotten show, so they could have done a good job of like convincing you like, oh yeah, no, it's just no one really talked about this because no one really watched this show, but it had something really fucked up on it. That's awesome. But I just feel like they could have gotten away with a lot more. I don't know. There's certain aspects of this film, both narratively and technically. Overall, this is a very fun, really fun horror film. I wish I could have seen it in theaters. This was probably an awesome theater watch. If not, you can watch it alone, but try to watch it with your friends. It's got charm. It does have charm despite some of its shortcomings. But yeah, let's talk about more specifics. What transpires in the film. Total spoilers. Don't listen on if you haven't seen the film yet, or if you don't give a fuck. Whatever. I tend to be very descriptive. So if you don't really like watching horror movies at all, but you like listening to this podcast and you like hearing my summaries, then go for it. But just know that there are spoilers from here on out. Here is a quick summary, courtesy of Letterboxd. The live television event that shocked a nation. A live broadcast of a late-night talk show in 1977 goes horribly wrong, unleashing evil into the nation's living rooms. So this film begins, and there's 9 fucking logos that you have to get through. So literally skip 2 minutes.
Oh my god!
Skip 2 minutes when you boot up Late Night with the Devil, and then you'll get to the film. The film begins. What was your favorite one? What was your favorite logo?
Oh, shit, I don't.
Do you
I
remember any of?
can't go
Do you
back and
remember
look at
any
them
of them?
because
Some of them were really funny.
uh,
I like David
wasn't there
Dastmalchian's
one
company
with?
is one of the logos, and it's like this cool claymation thing.
Is that the one where somebody's like looking outside? It's like at the monsters
Yeah, I think that's it.
on the street. Okay,
One of the
I like
logos
that
is
one.
literally just like spooky media, and it's like, come on, spooky films. It's like, all right, you made that one up. You fucking made that one up.
That's not really. You just want to throw another one in.
Oh yeah, and so we get the opening shot of the film. It's an opening shot of an old TV on a cart. The TV set in the background, the set of Night Owls, and things can be seen in the TV static. This actually comes up a little bit later, too. Movie begins, and we cut to footage of the 1970s, all sorts of 1970s turmoil, energy crisis, and Watergate. The Satanic Panic, serial killers. There's a quick shot of like Son of Sam. This is all narrated by Michael Ironside. I didn't know who it was at first, but I still recognized the voice. It sounded like fucking Optimus Prime, but it was Michael Ironside.
Almost certain that man is passed away, but
No, he was in Invincible.
oh, for real?
Yeah,
Wait.
dude.
Oh, okay.
Dude,
Okay, I
there's a
must be wrong.
scene. Quick aside, there's a scene in Invincible where the guy that is voiced by Optimus Prime is like, if we have Invincible, he can save the world, and it's like, fuck yeah, like no one else can get away with that kind of shit, but Optimus Prime. Like you're expecting the fucking like Linkin Park to start playing after that. It's the most hell yeah moment. It's like.
It's just kicking right there, dude.
He can save the world, and it's like hell, fuck yeah, no. Like, oh my god.
Oh yeah, he can.
During this, the Abraxas cult, which is one of the biggest players in the film, they're interspliced with the real footage of like other satanic panic things going on. I love this. This is one of the things where it's like, yeah, they're doing a great job of, convincing you it's a real thing. In your head, you always know that it's, you're watching a fake movie. But, when the film goes out of its way to include details like intersplicing the footage they shot for the film with actual footage of what they're trying to mimic, and it looks as convincing, then it's like, yeah, hell yeah, I'll buy it. I'll totally buy it. After that, we're introduced officially to Night Owls with Jack Delroy. Jack Delroy is David Dastmalchian's character. He's the late night host. Jack gives a monologue on his first show, thanking everyone for bringing his dream to life. After that, there's a montage of various highlights of Night Owls, including, some funny games with the audience, comedy skits, and interviews with an animal expert. Late night shows still do that, by the way. Late night shows still have this weird thing with animal experts.
Yeah.
So far, like, I remember like Steve Irwin was always on.
Wait, what?
Steve Irwin was always on late night shows, and now his son is on all these shows too. There's always animal experts. That's why that was a bit in that Seinfeld episode where he gets isn't there remember when Kramer gets the late night set in his apartment? The first thing he brings on is an animal expert.
I meant something to you.
You haven't seen it.
That's so funny. I've seen probably total. I'm gonna 7 episodudes.
Seven episodes of Seinfeld. The first thing that Kramer
maybe not
does,
even 7.
Kramer gets like an old set, finds it in like the dumpster, and he puts it in his apartment. And the first thing he does, he just pretends to do a talk show, and he brings on an animal expert, and he brings on like a monkey that attacks George. It's fucking funny. The narration at this point points out that the show helped the nation forget its troubles. Footage is then shown of Jack signing a 5-year deal with the UBC, which the fictional network they'll be using throughout this film. Rotation of various magazine covers. These are pretty funny. Yeah, they go through like the Hollywood Observer. Like the first one is literally like the new sex symbol of Hollywood or something like that. It's David Dastmalchian as Jack Delroy. These are pretty fun. There's also some funnier ones later on. During these rotating magazine covers, the narrator points out that Jack wishes to dethrone Johnny Carson. Johnny Carson's I think one of the only other notable talk shows that were going on at this point. I know the Dick Cavett show was also one of them. That's the one I know more of. I never really watched any Johnny Carson. That's never mentioned. There's every other show I think is kind of fictitious, but Johnny Carson is the real one. Jack then marries a stage actress named Madeline Piper, who becomes his muse, a confirmation of his success, kind of like his trophy wife. That's a character that is probably the most important character in the movie besides Jack. We then get info on Jack's association to The Grove, a harmless summer camp for the rich and famous, as the Michael Ironside says. This catches you immediately off guard. Just this footage of the woods and this, nefarious place called The Grove. It's like, oh yeah, he got married to the love of his life, and then he also went to these fucking cult meetings out in the middle of nowhere. I don't know how much you know about what this is actually supposed to be. But The Grove. What? No. Yes. No.
I was gonna ask.
I know
this is a real thing.
I know too much about this. Yeah, this is a real thing. It's called the Bohemian Grove. You've probably have heard of that. You've probably heard that name before, have you?
Yes. Yeah.
The Bohemian Grove is a real thing.
Gentleman's Club.
They don't call it the Bohemian Grove in the movie, but it's the same thing. They also worship a giant owl effigy type of deal.
It's in California.
It's in Oregon, I think. Is it in California or Oregon?
Ontario.
Yeah, go there with your family.
Ontario.
But yeah, it's... You know what? I think we talked about a couple episodes ago, when conspiracy theories used to be a lot more harmless and funny. And this was part of it. The Bohemian Grove is an actual thing that rich and powerful people would go to, and it's kind of like a men's club, and they discuss fucking New World Order shit. That's kind of what it was associated with. When people still thought there was shadow government and shit like that, and people with I guess they thought politicians had superpowers. The Bohemian Grove, interestingly, is where fucking Alex Jones got his first big break. That whole shit started, his whole thing. Yeah. His whole thing started because he broke into the Bohemian Grove and filmed some of the ceremonies.
Wow.
That's how that was the beginning of Alex Jones.
And he claimed it was a ritual sacrifice. Oh,
yeah.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
If that makes sense.
Wow.
If things start making sense about that guy and what modern conspiracy theories would become, you can thank him and his trip to the Bohemian Grove.
That's so cool.
When in reality, that's so cool. when in reality, this is just kind of like a jerk off fest, I think.
It's kind of what it looks like. It's I'm seeing, the famous photo that comes up when you look at Wikipedia or whatever is a table with Ronald Reagan. Richard Nixon is there.
Well, Richard Nixon famously hated it.
Yeah.
He has a really funny quote about about what he thinks about the Bohemian Grove, and I implore all of you to look that up and lightly chuckle to yourself. I won't read it on the show. It's to me what the Bohemian Grove might be now. It's you go there and it's Tom Brady walking up to fucking, I don't know, Cory Booker. and Cory Booker going man, that's some fine ball you're playing. That's an excuse for I'm basically thinking of modern Bohemian Grove to be every place where you can talk to Tom Brady. Also, it's only for
our
guys.
plan to pair Kelsey up with Swift is working perfect.
Oh, that was absolutely part of it.
America won't know.
No,
what
I
hit
totally
it.
believe that. I totally believe that. I
Yeah,
think they
that was planned
script.
at the Bohemian Grove.
I think they script every NFL season at the Bohemian Grove. I think that's what it's meant for.
They hire and fire people based on their performance, completely scripted fashion. They begin and end careers by design.
Yeah, so it's in the movie. Now back to the fake Bohemian Grove.
Yeah,
They're all dressed in these
the
owl.
less scary one.
But yeah, we get into more funny antics of from night owls. But ratings couldn't keep up with Carson despite still being nominated for Emmys. A cartoon is shown. This is one of my favorite cutaway magazine covers. It's a cartoon shown of Carson beating up Jack in a boxing ring. And Michael Ironside begins to say, "History remembers only kings." It's like, God damn. That's actually, I think that sets up what the main. It's a funny line. It's a funny thing to include, but I also think it sets up the main through line, the main theme of what I think the movie's trying to go for. But it's after this when it's revealed that Madeline is diagnosed with lung cancer, and the narrator actually points out that she was a non-smoker, which makes this whole situation even more of like a freak thing, and makes it more devastating onto Jack. And Jack uses that opportunity to have Madeline appear on the show, and she's in a wheelchair, and her voice is coarse. She's struggling to breathe. It's actually really it's really hard to watch. I haven't been through anything like that, like seeing anyone in that state, but it is very off-putting. And I think the actress that plays Madeline plays it very well. And it's pointed out that this actually gets Night Owls its highest rating, but it follows a point short of Carson. This is the first point in the film where it's like, I'm kind of, you start to feel empathy for Jack, but also you have to think after it's pointed out, oh, it got its highest rating. You have to think did he try to pop a rating for that? Did he try to use his sick wife to pop a rating? Maybe. And I think what we see in the film, it kind of speaks to that a bit. You know what it reminds me of? I out myself as a wrestling fan too much on this show, I think, but there was a point a year or two ago where Vince McMahon there's all these allegations against Vince McMahon coming out about sex trafficking and shit. And Vince McMahon responded by trying to pop a rating on his show and just coming out there and being like, well, have a good show. And you're like, what the fuck? And he popped a rate. It did a fucking crazy rating. And it's oh, you see his graphic, Vince McMahon speaks to the WWE fans. And it's oh, I have to watch this. What the fuck is he going to go out there and say? And he goes out and says nothing. And it's yeah, there's just people like that. There's just fucking people like that. It's really gross. And it's funny because
Have no sense of shame.
Yeah, no sense of shame. So Jack could kind of be like that. But I think the film does a great job of not outright telling you that Jack is a bad person. They just kind of let you decide for yourself. And that's kind of something I actually really admire about Late Night with the Devil. But anyway, after that, Madeline dies 2 weeks later. And Jack is, full of grief and removes himself from the public spotlight, but returns only a measly month later. I feel like a month isn't.
That's
that
so soon.
It's really soon. He's got to get out there. He's got to beat Carson.
To grieve your dead love of your life.
Yeah. Well, you got to think what
years.
If it took a month, what was he doing within that month? And after he returns, Night Owls continues to fail against Carson. widening the gap even further between the two. It even shows the like ratings and all the shows that are in between Carson and Night Owls. We're then introduced to the producer Leo Fisk, who we'll see in the behind the scenes sections of the film. He's mentioned for the first time as the narrator reveals that his new tactic was to use the show to create more controversy, kind of like the last time they popped a rating with Madeline's appearance on the show. A montage is then shown of more incriminating clips, like a soldier and a draft dodger coming to blows, Jack arm wrestling a little person, and a punk girl telling Jack that he used to be the fucking man. That's uncensored, and Jack gets fucking really pissed about that. Like, it's the most angry you see him in the film, I think.
Yeah, she like cuts into him.
Yeah, she cuts
in like a
into
way
him.
like nobody else does.
Yeah. What this is reminding me of is less late night and more daytime TV. Again, daytime TV, like Jerry, like he's trying to turn into like Jerry Springer or things like that.
That's what the name I was trying to sum it up.
Yeah?
Isn't there a show called like Maury?
Maury Povich.
Yeah. That's another one of those like Jerry Springer type.
Yeah, it was one of those like 90s,
right?
It's one of those like those daytime TV shows that dominated the 90s.
And it's just like pitting people against each other basically for
you
like,
are not the
original
father, like that whole
Star.
thing. Yeah. I mean, it was
that is what his shows are.
It was phenomenal TV. Like it was there's a thing where it's like, well, I used to watch like some of my favorite clips from these shows I love watching. There's the Gigi Allen interview on, I think it's Springer. That's an all-timer. And that kind of reminds me of
God.
That kind of reminds me of the punk girl telling Jack off. I remember a clip, oh my God, I think it was Maury, of he just had just random fucking neo-Nazis on the show, and like he had like almost the entire crowd was like about to beat the shit out of them. Like it is an insane clip to watch. And
what did they talk about? Like, what were they? Were they just like,
why are you a Nazi? It's
really,
no one really gets to say. No one really gets to say anything.
Got issues with my mom.
Not even that. It's like they're just so adamant about being a Nazi, and then like almost the entire audience is like, "You need to leave, or I'll beat the fuck out of you." Like, and it was an insane TV. Like, this is just on network television. They don't do anything like this anymore. Like they would. I don't know what would happen.
They don't make it like that no more.
They don't make it like that anymore. I don't know what would happen if they did this on
I'll tell you what happened. Probably everybody would get canceled today. You know what I mean? They'd probably cancel everybody.
And that's worse. And that's way worse. I remember there's also one of my favorite clips too. There's talking about being canceled, Marilyn Manson on one of these shows with like a bunch of his fans on, like, Maury's like the only person that comes to mind right now. Phil Donahue, maybe? I think it was definitely Donahue. Phil Donahue was the show. There was just this girl talking about like he was asking like, why do you guys go to all these shows and you mosh and you hurt each other and you stage dive and you get really hurt doing all that stuff? And she explains, she's like, well, it's times are tough. It's just a way to get express all of our anger about the world and all of our despairs and everything like that. And Phil Donahue's answer is like, well, you guys are teenagers. You guys are kids. What do you have to be so sad about? And it just makes my blood boil every time I see it. It's like, what do you guys have to be so sad about?
We're all rich.
Yeah. What do you guys have to be so angry about?
We all have everything we could ever possibly
It's the 90s. What could you be mad about?
Listen. When you leave the studio, get in your chauffeur limousine, get on your private jet, home to your condo.
Go smoke a cigarette, which is good for you.
Sleep on it, which is good for you. Wake up in your beautiful 5 bedrooms, 6 bathrooms.
6
God, the
more
video.
bathrooms than
You're gonna
bedrooms.
feel. I can tell you, you're not gonna listen to bug music ever again. I think I've seen that interview.
I think I told you to watch it once because I had just seen it.
Mm.
Yeah,
that
it's a
sounds
clip I watch.
infuriating.
Yeah, it's a clip I watch a lot. And that's what these antics remind me of more than anything than like what late night TV shows. Late night TV has always been to me like so less controversial than what this movie makes it out to be. I can't really name a lot of controversial things that have happened on late night TV.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, this is. I think you nailed it earlier. I think this is like way more like this is the type of bullshit I associate with daytime crowd work.
Yeah, like Crash
nonsense.
TV. I think that's a name. That's what they call it,
Yeah.
I think. There's a time that like what we grew up in, I don't really associate late night TV with pulling stunts like this. So it's a different time, and I guess it is trying to build like a time capsule like this stuff used to happen. I haven't seen any Carson clips that are controversial. The only controversy I saw in late night was like David Letterman having Harmony Korine on, and Harmony Korine saying the most outlandish stuff, which was awesome. Those are also some of my favorite
That
clips
is
ever.
Legendary.
Yeah. How much money did it take
like
to make
late
Gummo?
night TV until you said that.
Yeah. How much money did it take to make Gummo?
I just wanted to
like $1 billion.
I think my favorite quote from that is when he says, "I just wanted to write the next great American novel." Well, actually, I don't actually care if it's great or not. I just want it to be American. Something along those lines. I was like, this kid
I love him.
is taking him for a ride.
Go see Aggro.
So good.
Aggro Drift. Go see it in Brooklyn where you can watch it with a live DJ set.
Oh, wait, what?
Yeah, I was thinking about.
Are you talking about Gummo or that clip?
No, his new movie with Travis Scott.
Oh, his new movie. Oh, what?
Yeah, the one in Infrared.
Oh my!
You can see it in Brooklyn with a live DJ
I have not heard
set.
of this at
I
all.
think that passed already, and it sold out instantly. I was thinking about going.
Oh.
If you have any of your favorite late night clips that are incriminating or controversial, please send them to me. It's just a world I don't really know about that much. Anyway, going on with the film, Jack uses Halloween night in 1977 as a last-ditch effort to save night owls. So now we're getting to the framing of this film. The film is meant to be the master tape of what aired that night, including unreleased behind-the-scenes footage that we'll see. It is how closely they stick to this framing that contains what works for me and what doesn't work for me in this film. For the most part, it's good. Like they do a good job. So we get title cards, and the movie actually starts with a proper countdown and 2-pop. And we get to a bumper of the Cavendish Group, and it's Gus narrating at this point. Now we're in the Night Owls. We're in the movie, the real tape of what happened during the Night Owls returned. Let's shake on it is the motto, but the let's shake on it is like, to me, meant to be like, let's make a deal with the devil. This whole group that runs the network, basically, that's kind of what it's inferring to me. But the show starts proper with Gus introducing everyone to Night Owls and goes through the guests. By the way, Gus is kind of like the Andy Richter of Night Owls, if you've ever seen Conan O'Brien. I don't know, does any other show have an Andy Richter type?
Totally.
I'm just going to call him the Andy Richter of this show.
No, definitely not any of like the modern ones.
Not any of the modern ones, no.
No, I can't think of that.
The show starts proper with Gus introducing everyone to Night Owls. It's kind of starts like Saturday Night Live, music and all. He's introducing everyone and goes through all the guests, including Chris Dew, one name only, Chris Dew. The name Chris and then Tou. That's his full name, Chris Dew. That's the psychic. Carmichael Haig, an illusionist, a skeptic. And Dr. June Ross Mitchell with Lily, the subject of her new book, Conversations with the Devil. And musical guest Cleo James that we fucking just never see. Really funny line toward the end of the movie regarding the musical guest. Gus is then shown and introduces Mr. Midnight, Jack Delroy. And Jack doesn't initially appear and instead appears behind Gus in a sheet, one of those like sheets, bed sheets, and like he's a ghost. He appears behind him to give him a good old scare. So far, I have to talk about the look of the actual footage. How good of a job do you think they do trying to harness the aesthetic? I'm kind of in between on it.
Yeah, that's how I feel. I like the look of like the that like intro.
Intro is
before
great.
We come into the actual stage.
Yeah, it looks very
That
convincing.
looks really great. Footage looks a little too high definition or something to work. It like the use of the colors and everything, like I can tell all that stuff is like spot on.
Yeah,
but
it is in the right
there's
aspect
something
ratio
about,
too.
I don't know if it's it is.
Yeah, it is boxed, right? It is.
Did you say it is?
Yeah, it's not like super widescreen. Like it's still.
I can't tell.
The fidelity of the picture,
like you can tell
looks
they're
right to me.
Intentionally, it's the fidelity, and then like you can kind of the fidelity helps you see where they are making the adjustments in post and stuff with like the color grading and stuff to push it closer to that old like late 60s 70s look. I think if it was like maybe lower quality or not actually lower quality, because then it would be hard to actually tackle that stuff in post. But like, I don't know. There's just something about it. It just doesn't look like what they used back then.
You can kind of,
and they probably shot it with something that's not even really close to.
Yeah, you can kind of. That's kind of part of what I say, where like they didn't really take it far enough. But I guess for this, you can kind of justify it with like, oh, but they took the master tape and they restored it with modern technology. The only thing that really doesn't work about it visually is the background art. I don't think looks like anything that anyone would make in the 70s. And I think that is one of the AI things, like the Night Owl's art on the door with the owl and the moonlight in the background. That looks too modern to me. And that kind of takes me out a bit. It looks too minimalist.
Yeah.
But
yes.
I do like the.
I think I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I do like the fidelity of the picture itself. I think they get that right. And especially later on when things start going awry, it does look very good. It's shot beautifully, but also like too good.
It never takes me out of it.
Some of the camera work, though, and we'll get to like some of like the zooms and zips and everything like that. It's like a late night show would never do that. It would be a lot more static. And while it doesn't make for a very dramatic shot, it like, I don't know, for a found footage film, like, I don't know, it's supposed to be real. So I don't know. I'm kind of torn on that. What does bother me a bit is how clean the audio is. It's way too clean. There should be a little bit more fuzz to it. And even later on in the film, when parts of the show start to become played back and fed back into the feed, that's when it sounds like it should. And it's like the whole movie should sound like that. But the whole movie doesn't sound like that. The whole movie sounds a little bit too clean to me. Gus, so Jack scares Gus, and Jack starts to formally give his monologue, and Gus immediately interrupts him by playing the theremin. If you don't know what the theremin is, they show you in the film, but it's a very specific instrument. Bernard Herrmann used to use it in all of his film scores. If you ever seen The Day the Earth Stood Still or The Twilight Zone, you've probably heard the theremin. It's a very specific instrument that no one really uses anymore. Not even really even sampled that much anymore either in like modern synthesizers or anything. It's a very specific sound. Yeah, and this basically sets up the theremin too for some scares later on too. Jack begins and he starts it off like a, pretty standard late night monologue, bringing up all these different topical events going on at the time, 1977. Things like, Jimmy Carter he mentions, and also Reggie Jackson. He even specifically says, like, did anyone go to the parade? He's talking about the Yankee parade for one of the fucking million times they won the World Series. And and he starts to mention Sweeps Week, which is this national ratings period. He's nervous about keeping the sponsors happy, but the viewer matters most. Jack never gave up because of them. He then brings up interest in the occult and brings out Chris Dew. And Chris Dew is this psychic. If you've ever seen shows about like mediums and people trying to, speak through the dead, that's basically what he is. There used to be a lot more of this type of thing. Another one of my favorite daytime TV things was psychics. There used to be a lot more psychics around, including one of my favorite things of all time is this lady named Sylvia Brown. Do you know who Sylvia Brown is, Zach?
No, Sylvia Brown. Wait a minute. I think I do know. Is she the? Yes, I know this lady. Yeah, she would do the same stuff that Christo is doing here, right? She would tell people in the audience, "Oh, I dead son," or would even try to help them find family members that had been like missing or something.
Yeah,
right?
She would tell them where their body is. One of the best all-time moments in anything about a psychic. Sylvia Brown, this woman is, I think it's on Maury. Sylvia Brown is being asked what happened to this woman's husband. And she was like, she was this old woman who sounded like she smoked 1 million cigarettes a day. She was one of the biggest frauds ever, but she was so matter of fact about her readings. It was so fucking funny. This woman is asking, where her husband's body is. And she just responds, he's in water. I see him in water. The woman is like, how could that be? He was a firefighter. He died in 9/11. And she responds, she's just like, no, he's in water.
Yeah. Are you sure he was a firefighter?
Chris, yes. So Chris Dew, I think, is a lot more likable than Sylvia Brown was, and he's also way more charming than Sylvia Brown. So I don't know.
I do think
psychics
this
are
movie. I think they're funny. I do think this movie also is maybe what I got from it. One of the core themes is like, I think part of what happens, the satanic acts that occur later in the movie, are a form of punishment for characters, like basically taking advantage of sensitive people, like grieving people or what have you. And there's a character later that's introduced that is literally like, his whole MO is that he is pissed with these types of people.
Yeah.
Or that reason.
His whole thing is to create a
because in real life, like, these people sometimes do some damage to people, like that. I know they've like Sophia Brown or herself is like
Sylvia Brown
convinced herself. Like they literally give misinformation about like actual crimes.
Yeah.
That are like that.
And it still made them like a ton of money.
And makes them like a shit ton of money. Yeah.
Well, yeah. While Chris Dew,
I think I did see something about like.
Yeah, while Chris Dew is kind of like, he's in the fiction of the film, like he's also not real. Like he's a fraud. But you also kind of feel bad for him. especially what comes up later. But it is kind of funny how the film pokes fun at him for a bit and then also just gives him a very wild punishment for his actions. Yeah, so Jack brings out Chris Stew. And Chris Stew points out that Halloween is a chance for spirits of the recently deceased to attend to any unfinished business. Masks allow you to hide from angry spirits. Chris Stew gives his demonstration. He hears the name. He gets a reading. He hears the name Peter, which changes to Pete, then Peterson. And finally, someone in the audience says his wife's maiden name is Peterman. However, the man reveals that his wife is not deceased and actually ran off with her neighbor 5 years ago. Funny bit. I think this guy is also meant to be a plant. Like, I think Leo later on tells him, like, how'd you like our friend? And it's that guy. But Jack points out a man. Yeah, so after that, it's funny. Like, he's just like, it's gone. Whatever, fine. He just moves on to the next person. Before that, though, Jack points out a man in a skeleton costume sitting next to the other guy that was just being interviewed. And he just kind of stares blankly at Jack. And Jack kind of, like, he's poking fun at him in his cheap costume and everything. But he's just, it's definitely like, that guy's someone. That's what was running through my head. I was like, that guy's someone.
Yeah.
Which at this point in the film, I'm like, ooh, I'm really liking this. Like, they're going in really good direction here. Like, bringing the audience into, like, wait, some of these people might be in on whatever might be going to happen. And again, little details here and there that keep you immersed. That's one of them. Chris Stew then receives a new signal. He approaches two women sitting in the front row. He asks them who Edward is. The younger woman reveals that Edmund was her little brother, and Chris Stew surmises that Edmund committed suicide. He comforts the women, telling them that Edmund is at peace now and that he still loves them. The audience gives Chris Stew a pretty rousing round of applause. But as Jack is about to lead into break, there's a slight glitch, and Chris Stew starts to freak out. He receives a powerful message. He hears the name Minnie, but no one speaks up. He sees a wedding ring and an unmarried man. Jack tries to, everything's going kind of nuts here, and Jack is like, maybe it's Molly or someone. And then Chris Stew just shouts back, and I'm like, no, it's Minnie, it's Minnie. Again, no one speaks up. His eyes start to roll back into his head. You even hear, like, the little squirts and everything. It's some good sound design in this movie, even though it's really not realistic at all. It's still expressive sound design, which I can buy, and when done right in a found footage film. His eyes start to roll back in his head. The lights start to short. The show then goes to break, and the camera zooms in on the guy in the skeleton costume right after this. Great set piece here. Really good set piece.
I would assume that all this was planned, and I would be like, this is the fucking best show ever.
Yeah. Well, it kind of reeks of, like, what would air naturally now at, like, 3 a.m. on Adult Swim.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, the part where he's like, oh, yeah, don't worry. Sorry, folks. It's just the lights acting up. That is totally, like, that's the moment where I'd be like, well played.
Yeah, it's Adult Swim infomercial energy.
I see.
So this is one of our first backstage segments, and I want to get your overall thoughts on how this whole backstage section is presented. They do this a couple times. Basically, what they do is they just cut to black and white, and there's just regular old camcorders. These are the found footage segments of, well, it's all found footage, but this is like the typical, like, guy with the camera filming something segment, of traditional found footage. It's well made, but still maybe a bit overproduced. At least I believe. Like, what do you think about them?
I'm gonna agree with you. It feels kind of like, I think the worst part about them is how I feel like they're often so disconnected the rest of the movie. Like, the most interesting stuff is what's happening on stage.
Yeah. Well, it's
and it
supposed
feels
to be
almost like
it's supposed to be, like, kind of jarring, right?
Yeah, I think like at first I was cool with that, but at some point I think I wanted them to or intersect a little more with the main event.
Well, the thing is, like, they're
Cut
not.
to them, it feels so like just you're hitting the brakes.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, like, to me, I mean, I might be the opposite. Like, to me, like, it's not jarring enough. Like, they're not. These segments aren't like chaotic enough to me.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point.
Like,
Yeah,
some
there's
good
no
things
like
happen in them. Like, there's some good dialogue, especially when Leo appears, which we'll get to. There's some good dialogue in these scenes between Jack and Leo. Other than that, like, it seems way too much like a movie at that point. Whereas the actual like talk show segments,
yeah,
you feel
a
like you're watching
standard movie.
something else, you know? Which is funny, you know. I feel like it's
Yeah,
supposed to
no,
be the opposite
absolutely.
because this is supposed to be the more
That's what you're here
revealing
for.
stuff, you know. But anyway, like cut to behind the scenes footage of Jack helping Chris do. Gus approaches Jack, concerned about the restraints and knives he saw backstage. We'll get to this knife. There is a specific knife that appears, and I'll tell you this is Chekhov's knife. So pay attention to the knife. Leo then appears. Leo, of course, is the TV producer. I think this character is great, and the guy plays it so well. Leo appears and offers Krista a bourbon, but he asks for water. To which he responds, "In this place." He demands Christu stay on the show despite his condition. He gives Christu a towel for his bloody nose. Jack and Leo then speak in private. Jack thinks Leo is responsible for the lights, and he takes credit despite not having anything to do with that. He then asks what Jack thinks of Barry, but Jack looks more concerned. So Barry was the guy that was kind of the failed Christu attempt, and the first failed Christu attempt that was like, we're meant to think like, oh, that guy was just a plant, and he was doing a bit. Jack doesn't care about any of this, and he's more concerned about Christu. But Leo assures Jack that this is great TV. He then mentions Cavendish, and you saw in the beginning that the Cavendish Corporation was like the main sponsor of the show. That has something to do with the whole Grove thing, and that's at least what I gathered from it. Like Cavendish is supposed to be like the head of the network, I believe, and I think the head of the network is like part of the Grove part of the movie. So whenever you hear the name Cavendish, that's who they're trying to appease. And he mentions his wife sitting in the front row with the head of Airtime, and they want to meet Jack, but Jack exclaims that he has no time. Jack then asks Leo about June. Now, June is the character we'll meet in just a bit. But Leo tells Jack to relax, that everything is going very well. Jack returns to the stage to get ready to return from break. The makeup girl tries to do Christy's makeup, but he grabs her arm and demands she stop. Like, it's kind of like actually very shocking. And that's mostly the first backstage segment done. Jack warns Christy about Carmichael Haig too before returning from break, and we'll talk about Carmichael Haig in just a sec here. But I want to focus on Leo right now because imagine in your head a TV executive in the 70s. I think they nailed that with this character. Leo is fantastic. He's wearing sunglasses the whole time. His outfit is right.
So sleazy.
The hair, he's so sleazy. And he has some great lines later on too, especially when he's interacting with Gus toward the end of the movie. Oh my God. This is part of the movie that I just feel is like wildly entertaining part of the film is the character work that these guys are doing. Both, obviously David Dastmalchian is doing a great job so far. And he's kind of the one that's, sucking you into the film. And then you have characters like Leo adding to that, but also the character we're about to meet, Carmichael Haig. We return from break, and this is where the first AI slide is shown. We talked about that at length. Just re-listen to that part of the show, I guess, if you want our thoughts. I'll try not to mention it as many times. Well, you know what? No, I'm gonna mention it. These AI slides still.
You know what?
This is where the first slide is shown, and it still sucks.
Let's get back to these AI slides. Yeah, they're not good.
Yeah. But Night Owls returns from break, and Jack introduces Carmichael Haig. He's introduced to the set, and he does some sleight of hand tricks with his cigar, like immediately before speaking a word. He's totally hamming up everything, and that's kind of his shtick. Jack talks him up, commending his hypnosis act in Vegas. He's one of those guys. He's like an illusionist, hypnotist, but he also mentions that he was part of the Amityville haunting as well. And he even mentions Ed and Lorraine Warren, famously from from real life, but also the Conjuring movies.
Reality.
Yeah. I mean, most famously from the Conjuring movies, because they were known to be complete frauds, I believe.
Yeah.
So, so pictures are shown of the Haig at the Amityville home, and he mentions that Ed and Lorraine Warren were supposed to be a part of that, but they declined to join because he probably wanted to expose them in some fashion. Haig rocks. He's so funny.
Yeah. Okay. I was gonna say, yeah. I just wanted to take a second to say he adds so much to the dynamic of the movie. Like, he rules. The actor rules.
Yeah.
It's an awesome performance, and his like standoffish, like.
Yeah, he's there.
Like, adversarial role is so fun to watch.
He's there to be he's there to be like to confront everyone. To everyone. That's his role. He knows his role. That's what he's getting paid for. And he hams it up. And the performer himself,
Sassy.
like Ian Bliss, is so I think people might think like, oh, he's so like he's hamming it up so much it's like distracting. He's a showman. That's his thing.
Yeah. I think the character is
know?
hamming it up because out of like sarcasm. It's almost like a spiteful hamming it up. Like he's like a magic trick, and it's very hammy, but he's doing it to show off how easy it is to fake a magic trick.
Yeah, he before he even says anything, he's doing these like sleight of hands with his cigar.
He's like, yeah, I can do this stuff too. Yeah.
He's part of the best scenes in this
great.
movie. He's part of the best scenes in this movie in general.
Yeah, no, his dynamic is like, you just throw him in the middle of these other characters, and it immediately makes everything more interesting.
And you can argue that David Dastmalchian is hamming it up too.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But it's all on purpose. I can't imagine that it's.
Well, they're all in front of cameras.
Yeah, they're all in front of cameras. They're putting on a show. Leo, to me, like I was talking about Leo before. Leo to me also seems like maybe a bit hammy, and he's not in front of the camera. But I still think he plays his role perfectly. To me, like that was the part I was most enjoying, at least in terms of like all the setup and everything. Yeah, Jack then asks Haig why it's wrong to believe in the mysterious, and Haig slights Christou like almost immediately, like hasn't even shook hands with the guy, doesn't know the guy, but he's immediately just calling him, just slandering him in front of the cameras. He calls him a swindler, and that he'll continue to calls him a swindler that he'll continue to expose. Is the part of the movie also where he reveals this check. This is also part of one of the best gags in the movie that'll come later on. A check for $100,000 that he'll reward to anyone who can prove the existence of the paranormal. Christou is looks pissed, but he starts coughing uncontrollably, takes a big gulp of water. Jack asks Haig to explain Christou's readings that just happened, because the first one looked silly, and then he looks silly, but obviously the second one, and then the freak out with Minnie, that has to be something. Yeah, he points out he flopped the Peterman connection. Broken clock is right twice a day, he says. Christou throws a glass of water in his face. Great TV. Great. You want to say, we don't get this on TV anymore.
Yeah.
We don't just
bring it back.
Yeah. We need Springer. I mean, Springer's dead, but we need late night TV and daytime TV also to just have freaks and shit on them. I think we've mentioned that in this podcast earlier, but yeah, where's the showman? We don't really have showmen anymore.
Yeah, I guess like yeah, it's a different thing. Like it is like a distinct late night host, right? I think we said that before. Like
Yeah.
they're not doing the same thing that our current late
Yeah.
night hosts are doing
Like
now.
interviewing celebrities and
Late night hosting is less flavorful. Like they don't have,
yeah.
in my opinion, distinct flavors as hosts the way that like even like 20 years ago they did. Like I don't get what the point of somebody like a Fallon is. Like I
Of
really
course,
just
yeah.
don't understand what's his distinct thing he's bringing. I don't get it compared to like
Silly boyish charm.
Conan.
I guess that's supposed to be the appeal. They should have Kyle MacLachlan host a late night show if they want that.
That would be well. You
Well,
should patent that
maybe
idea real quick.
this could make me a very rich man.
This could make me rubbing my
Anyway,
hands together.
goofing. Anyway, he tries to leave the show, but Jack Warren wants him to expand on his last reading. Jack stands up and admits that the last reading may have been for him. Christou asks who Minnie is, and which Jack reveals is his private nickname for his wife. Haig tries to argue his claim and even increases the amount of money on his check to $500,000. Christou then collapses and projectile vomits black liquid that hits the back of Haig. He does this one more time to the camera, and Jack demands they cut to commercial. I mean, I saw this part in the trailer, I think, so it wasn't that surprising, but I do think it's a good scene in theory, but especially when he vomits black liquid onto Haig, that's good. But when he vomits at the camera, it's like, oh, the seams are coming loose, because that was obviously CG, and it's not that CG is always bad in found footage movies, but it is like you do have to work around it a lot more. And in this case, it just kind of looks a little shoddy.
It also just kind of was almost like too winky for like
Yeah, it's supposed to be like horrific.
yeah, like create an illusion, and then there's this like dissonance of like, okay, you're watching a late night show, but then these like really terrible things happen, and it's supposed to, that sort of contrast is supposed to actual chaos happening in front of you.
Yeah.
While people are trying to shoot a show, makes it feel, or that's where like the horror comes from.
Yeah, this is what Ghostwatch gets a lot better than this movie, I believe. But this movie, even if this movie is a lot more fun, that movie has a better effect on what it's trying to accomplish.
A really good point. This movie does kind of feel like it jumps around in terms of like its intent and what it wants to accomplish.
Yeah. And even though I'm like, you could see it as kind of like a nitpick too. Because at this point, like, I point that out, but I'm still enjoying it immensely at this point. Like, I'm still having tons of fun.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I enjoy a flawed movie, but it's like it's a fun hang.
Absolutely. And it's a fun rewatch. I rewatched this movie a couple times for the show, and each time I've enjoyed it. You know, I've enjoyed it kind of the same.
I might be dumb, but there are things I noticed rewatching it that I didn't pick up on the first time, and maybe they were really obvious the whole time. But I think there is stuff to see to pick up on. Surprisingly, like the second.
Mm-hmm. So we cut back to the behind the scenes footage. All of this aftermath. Bodily sounds are heard within Christou. Good sound design here. Good sound design. Even if it's, I was kind of nitpicking the movie for having clean audio fidelity. I don't mind it when it's something metaphysical like this. So the insides of Chris, you can hear his insides like churning. In this case, like the reason that works to me is like it's not meant to be literal. It's supposed to put you in the shoes of the character. So I can feel when I watch this scene, I can feel myself like tingling a bit. So it's effective. Leo takes charge and gets the crew in order, and Gus settles the audience. Haig snaps at a stagehand to fetch his burgundy blazer from his portmanteau, which fucking rocks. Haig is amazing. he snaps at this like stagehand like he's like snapping at a waiter or something, like garçon, like in like a restaurant. It's a fantastic line.
Yeah.
Like how can we make this guy sound like a pretentious asshole more and more? And they find great ways to do it.
All the way through.
All the way through. He accuses Jack of scripting this segment to create more drama for TV. Thinks his friends at the Grove would help him pull some strings. But Jack says that he overestimates their influence. This is surprising to me because, like, I guess Jack being a part of the Grove, like, I mean, obviously they were doing it for the documentary, but like, he's not treating it as this big sequence. And to me, he's just kind of like, yeah, I'm part of the Grove, whatever. Like,
yeah,
like he's just saying that to Haig. Yeah, just common knowledge. Oh yeah, there's a Grove, and I go there in the summers. Like,
yeah. Well, I thought the read was that like, the questionable part about them is like the ritualistic stuff, but they like people know they exist, but it's like seen as more of just a rich boys club or something like that.
Yeah,
like
no one knows that
Hollywood
they do.
Well,
you know what they end up doing. Haig wants to be invited one of these days to see if the rumors are true. He's more interested in the orgies than anything, and the way he fucking talks, like the way he says orgies specifically in this scene is so funny to me. Like, he's more interested in the orgies than anything. He's the cadence, the way that Haig carries himself is so good.
Yeah.
Leo then grabs Jack and they talk in private. This is something that is repeated many times throughout this movie. Jack calls Haig an asshole, and Leo reminds him to talk to Cavendish on their next break. He also tells Jack that people are starting to get upset, which Jack takes as good news. It's even though because Chris Dew throwing up all these weird power outages isn't weird enough. Jack is like, ooh, it's working. Like, even though he's not in control of any of it, like, this is not part of the show at all, and he knows it. But he's like, ooh, it's. There's something I want to get to about Jack in a bit. I won't bring it up now, though. Really interesting thing that I think is worth.
Well, I was going to bring
out.
up like my interpretation of some of the events of that. Like, if you did see something like this happening on TV, I mean, like, you would absolutely just assume that this was like part of the show.
Of course.
Like, there's
but he's
no
in
way.
The show.
Oh yeah, no, not for him, but
For
like
Jack,
the viewers and their reaction.
Oh no, you're loving this.
Like,
that comes up later.
Yeah, you're
too.
loving
like,
this shit.
Like, this is, and how successful this night ends up being. June, this is when June shows up, and June shows up, but the door closes on her as Night Owls comes back from break. So you just see that little shot of her, but she becomes more important later on. The Happy Halloween image is shown. I think it's more AI art. Bad, whatever. Jack assures the audience that Chris Dew is okay and is receiving medical attention. Haig assures that he's actually fine. It's good that Haig is assuring that, the expert. As Jack is about to introduce the next guest, he pauses as an ambulance can be heard off screen. The audience starts to whisper indistinctly. Fucking, that's what I'm talking about. That's the shit. That's the stuff that I imagine when I'm thinking about like this concept in action. That little scene right there was the best at like selling it, you know?
Oh, good. Yeah.
That's the part where it's like the room, you start to feel the room and it's like, it starts to feel cold.
Yeah. Yeah. Like you can feel the artifice of the space.
Yeah.
Like you're taken out of the show for a second. And it's just like, oh, this is, you're feeling their reality.
Yeah. And it just helps you become way more immersed. And like I'm at this point, like I fully buy into this movie, even though I see its flaws. I'm fully buying into this movie throughout a majority of it until we kind of get to the ending, and we'll talk about that. But from here on out, this is an incredible ride. So Jack finally starts to talk about conversations with the devil, and shows footage produced by June of the Abraxas cult. I just want to mention this name, Abraxas. Is this familiar? Is this name familiar to you, Zach?
Oh, Abraxas?
Abraxas. So there's references to Abraxas in some media. It's not really an entity that you see used in a lot of like exorcism movies, paranormal movies, which is why this is interesting. But if you know the name Abraxas, I know that I knew the name Abraxas because I know in the movie Mandy they worship Abraxas, that cult. And when they remember that scene where they blow the horn,
Yeah.
that's the horn of Abraxas.
Oh, okay. So this is like a known,
Yeah, it shows up in
like real life,
it's a real
like
thing. Yeah, he's real.
based on yeah.
He's a real guy, you know.
Yeah, he's a real.
I think there's also a Marvel thing called Name the Brand. Something related to Marvel called the Abraxas. It's funny because it's not like an entity that's like even recognized with evil.
I almost don't find that
go into
creepier.
Same.
Real mythology or religion that is like not associated with evil, but then
Is twisted
the implication
into
is
evil.
like men did this. Weirdly, is the first thing that comes to mind. But
Right.
whenever like a horror movie takes like a piece of mythology or religion or some figure within that like isn't generally associated with evil, and then they make it evil and depict it as like, oh, actually in reality this is and has always been really fucked up throughout history. I always think that's a really cool idea. I think it was the Green Man or whatever in
Yeah, it was something pagan
like
that.
piece of like yeah, that's like an actual pagan figure. But yeah, there's like the winged serpent is another really, really neat one based on like I believe that's African or some piece of African mythology, Quetzalcoatl or however you pronounce it. Might be wrong about that. That might be more Central American.
Let us know,
But
listeners.
yeah,
Let us know.
let us know. Let us know after you just Google it. You simply
We
Google it.
forgot to.
I'm going with Central American.
It's your final answer.
That's my final answer.
All right.
I'm not going to look it up. I refuse.
Anyway, a ritual is shown in this worn down house, and it shows a dagger, and it's presented as leader chants "Hail Abraxas," and the congregation follows. The man's name is Xander Diabo, but it's spelled with like an S-Z, silent S, and then Xandor. He says Abraxas exists outside of good and evil, and that he instead represents people's desires and what we do to obtain it. The master demands sacrifice. Some of the artifacts in the house include owl statues. There's more owl imagery, which you'll notice from the grove, and you'll start to immediately make connections with that. June narrates and explains how the cult had been kidnapping children and hoarding firearms, as cults do. The children are then bred for human sacrifice, and anyone who witnesses the ritual will fall under the spell of Abraxas and perform his bidding. Images are shown of cult members slicing their hands and rubbing them together. All this footage, it's all documentary footage. It's pretty convincing as like this cheesy 70s like background. I remember watching like History Channel cult. The History Channel comes up a lot on this podcast. And it's because and it will again, I promise.
Yeah.
The History Channel is a big theme here. I remember History Channel, like very cheesy documentaries about like satanic cults and stuff. Just, stuff my dad watched that I would have no choice but to witness. And that's kind of what it reminds me of, and it's pretty convincing in that regard. Take it from me, who's had to watch stuff like this for most of my life. The FBI then raids the home, and there's a 3-day standoff. Diabo commands his followers to burn everything down with the members inside. A 10-year-old girl named Lily is discovered in the aftermath. June starts to connect with her, trying to break her out of her mental state. Tape is played of June's first recording session with Lily. I really dig this part of the movie. There are thuds and scrapes, and June tries to make contact, but Lily starts screaming, and she's being restrained, and a demonic wail is heard before the tape stops. I love this scene. It's literally all you're seeing is like footage of a tape being played, and all you're hearing is the audio, but it's very immersive to me. We return to Night Owls with the audience gasping and some silences. After some silence, Jack introduces June and Lily to some. This is one of the scenes where kind of the juxtaposition between like horrific things we're seeing and like the showmanship of a late night talk show is being contrasted. So this footage is being shown and the footage ends of all this horrific shit. Jack is just like, now welcome June and Lily. They're here. They're backstage. Lily is at first shy to come out, but starts to eat up the spotlight rather quickly. I think she even like, she's the first one to be seen, and she like immediately like knows where the camera is and like curtsies to the camera. Jack shakes her hand, and he's surprised by her firm grasp. Jack thanks. Jack thanks June and Lily for joining them, and Lily responds, "I'm so glad you could join us too." The actress that plays Lily is fantastic. Everyone has been talking about her performance as like a very standout horror performance this year, and I'd have to agree. This is a really great role. It's
Yeah, she's fun. It's like of the right amount of like there's like a slight hamminess to it as well. Like
as with every one of
really
these
starts
characters,
playing-
yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like a comedic performance, but like yeah,
Well, it's just
that
like
almost makes it more.
in great possession movies, I feel like they have to be a little bit like this. They're always a little bit comedic, like the little possessed. They're the trope of the little possessed girl. I think they tend to be comedic. That's supposed to contrast with the horrific shit that's about to happen. It's a great performance, and it's by an relatively unknown actress. Found footage films don't really have a great reputation in general of having like standout performances, and this movie has like a couple. I feel like that's a big success. One of the biggest successes of this film.
No, that's a really good point. Like, I mean, you don't usually have like a notable actor in like your horror movie in general.
Yeah, and that's supposed to help out with immersion and everything, especially in a found footage film where that's kind of the priority. But we have a few named actors in this film that are kind of giving it their all, and it begs the question, like, is this movie really trying to convince you that it's real? And it's like, not really, but it's supposed to just be a fun time and using found footage as a framing device. And for the most part, it's working, because I'm not really asking too many questions during my watch so far. And the performances are the thing that's really keeping you going. Because this is also one of the few films that one of the few found footage horror films that relies on its dialogue and interaction between characters to really carry through the film. I feel like a lot of found footage films don't really rely on that. They rely on other tactics.
There is a heavier focus on the character dynamics.
Yeah,
like this person versus this person.
Coming out of the film, Lily is definitely going to be the most talked about aspect of that. So Lily stares into the camera directly, and she knows his wife died of cancer, and she tries to use comforting words. She then tells him that he doesn't need to worry about his show and that he'll be very famous soon. Demonic little girl shit. They go to break and they cut to more behind the scenes footage. As Jack tells them it's time to look pretty again, Lily starts to speak in Madeline's voice. And she says, "Don't I already look pretty, Jack?" He confusingly responds. He's like, yeah. Really great little moment there. Stuff like that. It's always moments like that that are punctuated by the sound design that really get you. And the simple trick of someone else talking, someone else's voice taking over someone else's body is that's always going to be very jarring, and it's used to great effect here in this one little scene.
I love that bit.
Yeah, there's always these little tiny things that are sprinkled across these movies that I feel are more effective than the big scares. We just had the Christou black vomit scene, and it's one of the few scenes that I don't think worked very well, and that was the most that looked like that was the highest budget thing to happen so far, the most theatrical scare. if you will, to, that happened so far. But it's littler things like this that I think tend to work a lot better.
And, her staring straight at
Yeah, moments
the
like
camera.
Yeah, like things we can
unblinkingly,
recognize.
always knowing which one that she has to.
Yeah, always knowing which one's the hard cam.
Yeah.
We then get June and Jack speaking in private behind the door. She warns that Lily is becoming more unpredictable, which Jack takes as a good thing that will help her sell her book. She tells Jack that Lily started saying his name in a fugue state. After this weird comment, Jack actually starts to get close to June while he's talking to her, kind of like he's more comfortable with her than you're meant to let on. Oh, this is more than just one of his guests. They know each other.
I got the sense they did know each other.
Well, that it's revealed, there's a reveal about them a little later on, but this kind of clues you into that. After that, Leo approaches and he tells Jack that. Go ahead. What are you saying?
Leo is just hiding around the corner.
Yeah, Leo is
Waiting to
always
pop out.
in the background, waiting to get a word in.
Yeah.
So Leo approaches and he tells Jack that Christou died in the ambulance. Jack is shocked but tries to keep it quiet. Haig is then seen questioning the women that Christou spoke to in the audience. They revealed to him that they filled out a questionnaire given to them by the lady who helped him when he collapsed. So that kind of shows his hand. It's a very mean thing to do, to cut to the reveal that he died, and then also the next scene is oh, by the way, he was a complete fraud, except for that one thing that was very real that killed him.
Yeah. It's fucking.
We need a little bit of meanness in our horror movies, so that's
always.
That's kind of
Always.
I think that's what that's getting at.
Also, I want to point out before we move from this scene, there's a point where I don't know what his position is, if he's the AD larger guy who's walking around. He shouts a lot of orders out the whole movie, he's the AD.
Yeah.
He walks past somebody. He walks in between them and says, "Where's my sacrificial dagger?"
Yeah.
I thought that was, who's got eyes on my sacrificial dagger?
Who's got the sacrificial dagger? Yeah, where is my sacrificial dagger? Again, this dagger, this is Chekhov's dagger. This dagger is mentioned probably every other scene, and we're about to see it soon, and there's always eyes on it. It's a very obvious clue, and as this, this is going to be important later. After that scene, he's who's got eyes on the dagger? And then they bring it out, and it's on the side table, through they're all sitting down, and there's this table in between Jack and the guests, and the handle is pointed at Jack's side always. It's I wonder.
Yeah.
This is important, isn't it?
mean any?
Night Owls then returns from break, and Jack asks June what parapsychologist is, and she confidently tries to answer, but of course, mean old Haig interrupts, and they start to argue a bit. She begins to explain that she believes in a minor deity lives within Lily. Haig grabs the dagger and starts to mess around with it. He points out that Abraxas is where magicians get abracadabra from, actually. I never knew that. That was a very cool thing that this movie pointed out.
Abraxas abracadabra. It's kind of sick.
It's sick. Lily's actually the one that finishes that thought. And Jack reveals that Lily has a name for this demon. She says his name is Mr. Wriggles because he wriggles his way inside and outside of her. Cue in the theremin that starts to play out of nowhere, and things start to get out of control a bit. The mic short circuits and loud feedback starts playing. It makes the set rattle and glass starts to shatter. Hagen plugs the PA system and everything stops. Lily assures it's Mr. Wriggles and calls out Haig. She reveals he's in the studio with them now. Jack wants to invite him to the show, but June is apprehensive. Lily insists, though. The audience gets involved, and she promises a brief demonstration in a controlled environment. After this, Jack delivers probably the best line of the entire film, and they cut to break. And if you want to know what that line is, I will play it at the beginning of this episode. We're going to try to make contact with the devil after these short messages.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the best line in the entire
And
film.
vintage, so good.
It's lines like that. It's moments like that makes this film more memorable than it has like merit to.
Yeah.
I want to touch on the theremin scene a bit too. Obviously, it's another thing where it's like it was set up in the beginning of the film, and like, oh, they're playing the theremin. I wonder, what scare is going to be used with that. I feel like maybe the theremin could have been used more effectively as just like, oh, it starts the playing out of control and causes feedback. It's like, oh, it's a little bit cheap to me, but there's better moments, especially later on. There's better moments sound wise that kind of save it for me. And just little scenes like this, it's like, oh, that could have been done better, and the Christie scene could have been done better, but there's more than enough good stuff to bite on. Well, what do you think? The whole PA thing, the mic short circuiting, the theremin, and all that, and the role that plays.
Yeah, I mean the effect of the electricity shooting out and zapping is like just like it's one of those things where it makes me from a vision standpoint, from like a design theory standpoint, it's like it makes the movie feel like it's a different kind of movie. Like it feels like it's trying to do something specific, and then it kind of betrays itself a little bit, almost like it can't resist doing these like goofier, almost like purposefully cheesy things that you like. No one, I think it has to work within the reality of the thing that it's trying to create, and it sometimes feels like there's an excuse of like, oh well, it's retro, it's a retro effect, and this is a retro movie. But it's like, well, no, it's not a retro setting. It's a retro setting, and it's trying to create a retro feel, but it's very much supposed to be like in some sort of reality.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and sometimes it commits to that, and sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah, well, it's trying to be convincing, and for the most part,
it could either be
does,
like,
but it has these like scenes like that are like, oh, this is very much like modern horror scare.
This is like creep show.
Yeah.
This is like creep show. Like you're doing like a creep show thing. You know what I mean? Like this is like comic booky.
Yeah, and in their world, it's supposed to be like, what is this? Like, it's not supposed to be like part of the show, but it, in our world, it's like, oh, this is like that reads as fake. But
I wish they would just commit to one. Like
exactly,
go all out
like
with
this,
the creep show stuff.
Yeah, like the the Madeline's voice thing and the I didn't even mention this, but there are like hidden ghosts throughout the film.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I wrote this down because there is a ghost in this scene for a second.
Yeah. Like there's a good like Twitter thread, I believe, that like shows you all of the like hidden and it's always Madeline too, like all the hidden Madeline scenes.
Probably a bunch that I've missed.
Yeah, they always tend to be like within not digital, but like her spirit is part of the tape.
Right. Well, here she's like on as the glass is shattering, you get a quick shot where you can see one of the objects, the reflection of one of the objects on the table.
That shit's that's
a split second.
Amazing. That shit's great, and I feel like they could run with that better than resorting to a scene like that with like electricity and the theremin. And yeah, it's kind of that was why I was more of like the low guy on this, is because like there were little inklings of like a better movie and like that I wanted in there, and I wanted more of that. And I thought it could have been a little bit more subtle too. The movie like is kind of at odds with its tone a few times, and it's not really choosing what tone it wants to set, and kind of until the very end. And it's not really the tone that I would have wanted from this film. Like scenes like it seems like the ambulance going by and everyone in silence. Scenes like that's the tone I kind of wanted. A little bit more Adult Swim and less. I don't know. I guess the Adult Swim does that
like
shit
EQ
too.
Comics.
Yeah.
Yeah, it feels more slapsticky. Um, and like, I could have gotten used to that and been like, okay, so that's the movie we're watching. But I think the issue is because it spends so much time in the middle, then you don't even get to have the really, really, really fucked up out there shit happening until like, I don't know, you're like in the last like third of the movie.
Yeah, and then it doesn't really work as well.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. They
Yeah.
could have just gotten there sooner if that was what they wanted to do, was really just go out there and goofy. Like I could have jived with that
Yeah,
if
this
if
movie
they
was
had
all
really
Goofy
committed to it.
Land. Great, because and the actors certainly know that that's kind of the script they were given, But yeah, it's like there's
Script potentially and not. I can see how as an actor you could read the script and potentially envision it as a more, like still like campy but more serious version of this, because it's really when you start to see the way that they interpret the effects and a lot of the visuals is when they're going for, okay, now it's Goof Town,
yeah, it's like
now it's a cartoon.
they're like preparing you to accept the least interesting part of the movie.
Yeah.
Whereas the scene we're about to get, the exorcism scene, which is like the exorcism and then the illusionist scene, the illusion scene, where it's like that's the shit. That's the shit that I'm looking for. But they're like sprinkling this, and it's like stick to like one mood, and I think it would have been a better film. But at this point, I'm still enjoying this, and I feel like it works anyway until that last little bit. But we'll get to it when it comes to it, because there's still a lot of interesting things that I want to make note of throughout the film. Gus then approaches Jack, and they speak backstage. He warns Jack that he doesn't know what he's doing, and Jack explains that he's just trying to save the show. He reveals that he knows about Chris Stew and that the crew is scared. Leo interrupts and stops the situation from escalating. He's fucking everywhere. The show returns from break, and Jack steps from the dark into the spotlight and speaks softly. He introduces the demonstration. The camera feed starts to glitch a little bit. Again, this is like it's established here that like Madeline is like living inside this tape. I like that as a concept way more than in a lot of other found footage movies where the camera just glitches for, cool effect. We'll see that a lot in the movies that we talk about. Here, it's like narratively important that happens. It's not just like, ooh, freaky scare, a little camera glitch. That happens in so many found footage movies, and it's always reads as cheap to me. But I respect it a lot more here.
Yeah, no, I think this is a much more like, it's funny how much of this is like what works and what doesn't has like almost not like, feels like it doesn't have as much to do with the script as much as it does like how they just choose to represent something. Absolutely. Like with the camera.
Yeah. The demonstration begins, and this is this your favorite part of the movie?
Yeah, I think so.
This is your favorite part? I like
it's this or it's the scene.
The scene after it. Yeah. That's my favorite, but this is also amazing.
Yeah.
Out of classic horror possession scenes, I don't know if this is high up there, but I haven't seen one like this in a very long time. That's for sure.
Yeah. No, this is what you call shit.
This is what we call the shit. The demonstration begins, and Lily is put into a trance. June asks if she can speak to Mr. Wriggles. No response for a moment. Camera glitches again before the chair makes a loud thud, and Lily starts to wriggle in her chair. Eventually, Mr. Wriggles responds in a demonic voice, and a new version of Lily's face is revealed. Great effects, great makeup, practical. She looks like a different person. It's awesome. Mr. Wriggles looks at the audience and is confused. Love this. This is my favorite part here. Usually in possession films, the possessed is tied to a bed, usually, or a chair. they're in a space that maybe a demon recognizes, but in this case, they're in a fucking talk show set. And he's like, wait, where the fuck am I?
Yeah.
That's great. Just like, that's a great idea to like bring a demon into a completely original space, and play with that for a bit. It's still like, playing up the horror, but it's all horror is like a little funny too.
Yeah, this would be like the most jarring thing. It's like when you bring your pet somewhere, like with
Yeah.
It's like, oh my God, there's 10 people here.
June asks what the demon's purpose is. When Mr. Wriggles addresses Jack directly, and he says, "Good to see you again, Jack." The voice of Mr. Wriggles is really good. The demonic voice kind of sounds like a city slicker, like a demonic city slicker or something. You get that impression?
Maybe.
Do you like?
I
kind of see what I'm talking about.
I kind of hear that.
Yeah.
Like there's a little noir bent to it.
Yeah. And I feel like that completely fits. Like that would be Jack's demon. That might be like what Jack sees himself as.
So it's more related to him than it is the girl.
Than to Lily, yeah. And that might not be
makes
a
sense.
literal thing, like not literally taking after, Jack, but like that might be something the filmmakers want us to think about.
Yeah,
That's
the
something I
slow
noticed
reveal
later
is that
on, yeah.
Jack is more like at the center of things. It's supposed to be like, oh, it's incidental that this ends up happening, but in reality, like this is all cause and effect.
Yeah. Well, when the movie begins with like, and he was in a secret society, it's like, yeah, he's probably very connected with whatever metaphysical shit is about to happen in this film.
Right.
Especially with the reoccurring owl imagery and all that. Jack doesn't understand, but Mr. Wriggles goes on to say that they met amongst the tall trees.
Love that.
June tells Lily to return to her, but Mr. Wriggles begins to mock her. The demon even reveals Jack and June's affair before June slaps Lily. The little nursery rhyme is a fantastic touch. Lily starts to cry, but as June begins to comfort her, the demon attempts to attack, and Lily's face is now more morphed into the demon's. It's more like zombie-like, and it's only for like a split second too that you can actually see it. Really well done, and also good use of editing and practical effects and all that. June escapes quickly and begins to recite a prayer that would release Lily from the demon. Her nose starts to bleed and addresses Jack again. This time, it sounds like Madeline's voice. Oh my God, yeah, this scene is just so good. Huge electrical disturbances start to happen, and Lily starts to levitate. The chair then slams down, and Lily seems to have returned to her unpossessed state. See, this is where the electrical stuff and even the theremin could have come back into play. Like, they shouldn't have shown their hand for a non-effective scare. I don't know why they would do that before this. Like, if they wanted stuff to be... They waited for the theatrical stuff, and they just do it again. Like, we already, established that there are electrical disturbances, but they're even bigger now. But it's like, it just happened, like, in the scene before this.
Yeah, rewatching it, it's like, wow, the last scare bit, like, with everything breaking to the PA system was, like, totally unnecessary.
Yeah. I mean, it might be, so, like... I don't know if it was, like, completely unnecessary, just ineffective, because, like, it is a thing of, like, Haig trying to, bring everyone down and show, like, oh, this is all an act, and, nothing to fear. And, he's the one that unplugs the PA system, and he's like, see, there's a rational explanation for everything, kind of thing. So I get why it's there, but it is also just, like, the same elements are at play,
Yeah.
I feel like something different could have been introduced beforehand. After a moment, Jack addresses the audience when Haig interrupts and immediately tries to disprove what just happened. Before he can go any further, Jack sends the show to commercial. Cut to BTS footage where the crew is still shaken. Haig tries to argue with Jack again, but Leo cuts him off. Leo's always fucking there. Leo cuts him off, and Jack is checking on Lily and June as Lily is being unstrapped from the chair. He then tells June that he wants this to be a regular part of the show. He's ecstatic about how everything went. this is the kind of movie that this is. And it shows the type of, person that Jack is. It's well established that like he just cares about putting on a good show, and all of the like the kind of like aw shucks Midwestern guy act is just that. It's all an act. And, he shows his real self in the, backstage footage. And I feel like the movie actually does a really good job of painting him not in a completely like evil light either. Like, obviously we're not supposed to think highly of Jack, but like, and I don't know if this is maybe just because David Dastmalchian is a likable actor. Jack, even though he is putting up this front on screen and then off screen, he's very self-interested. Not that I feel bad for him, but like, I think it's more complicated. He's not totally painted as like evil, even though he's part of evil cult number 5,
No. He's a human.
Yeah, they do a good job of painting him as a human being. And I think that might be more credit to the performance than maybe how the character is, and maybe that's by design. Like
you can see Jack, in that moment he has sympathy for Lily when he's like, he kind of cuts Haig off. So it's like, okay, we're not dealing with that right now. You can tear this down in a second, but
and it's easy to dismiss.
To comfort this little girl real quick.
Yeah.
But his concern for like other people or the little girl like doesn't outweigh his desire to.
Yeah, I feel like that's genuine, and also like maybe the love, and also like the grief and like love for his wife. I feel like is also genuine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think that, reflects more on like the theme of the film, which we'll get to in a bit. Jack goes to help Lily, and he even carelessly just grabs the sacrificial knife and starts cutting her restraints. Like, oh, yeah, just give me this shit, and starts, even though it's this like fucking, it'll work. We see side by side of Leo talking on the phone about how great the segment went. Gus then approaches Leo angrily. And Leo, out of some of the great movie insults, this is definitely up there for me, I would say. Leo calls him a shit your pants Mick asshole and orders him to keep grinning. Definitely, like, you have to be a wordsmith to come up with a thing like that. Haig tries to comfort Gus, but Gus reveals to him that Christou is dead. This is like the first thing that totally shocks Haig for a bit, but he doesn't verbalize any of it. It's kind of just on his face, and you see it, which I thought was really good. Jack helps Lily back on stage when Leo calls him over. He informs him that some of the crew have walked off, but the network informs him that this is their biggest TV event since the moon landing. Jack is giddy, and they've never been more back, basically. Jack even has a great line here. He's like, correct me if I'm wrong here, but is this the first time that Jack swears? He says, this is the night that Jack Delroy interviewed the cock fucking devil. And I feel like that's there to kind of reveal that, like, again, like I said, that Jack isn't this like, aw shucks, nice guy Midwesterner that the front that he puts up.
Yeah.
And that kind of reveals that dichotomy between the two Jacks. The show returns from break. At this point, like, this movie's on a roll for me. Like, I'm running a high off this movie right now. Yeah,
this is like, now it's firing on all cylinders.
And it's firing on all cylinders, and it's accentuated with this, where Jack begins with, he addresses the audience and begins with an apology. And he has a great line where he says, it's not every day you see a demonic possession on live television. And after he says that line, he kind of like smirks a bit. Like, he's still happy. Like, that's the first time, like, that the offstage Jack kind of bleeds into the onstage Jack. It's fantastic. And Dastmalchian is fucking great at doing that. It's so funny.
Yeah, no, it's especially, I just love how at this point they're just like, it's just full on everyone, like, there's a division happening, like a schism happening on the stage.
Yeah.
And so everybody is like against each other.
Yeah, now like factions are being built.
Yeah. Just crazy.
Yeah, and that's the kind of chaos that we're getting at. That's the kind of chaos that works better than, just playing, microphone feedback and electrical shit. That's the stuff that's more effective to me. So, and I think at this point, like the movie is
It builds tension
going with
too.
that. Yeah, it builds great tension. And I feel like at that point, like the movie is going with that, you know? Especially in like this next sequence here is also like, all right, how can we one up the last thing? In other movies, the last sequence is the climax of the film. But they decide that like there's another thing, like just another crazy segment is about to happen, and it's better than the last to me. That's the point where it's like you feel like you're watching an actual like good TV show. You are watching the good TV that they're excited is happening, you know? He asks
Now
Lily,
you're synonymous with like the fictional audience.
yeah, you are. You feel like you're a part of that live audience for a bit.
Yeah, it's dope. It's
awesome.
dope.
He asks Lily if she's okay and if she has any memory of what just happened. She says it's like she's asleep but awake at the same time. Haig interrupts and basically takes over the show at this point. He insists to try to disprove what just transpired. He claims that June is hypnotizing her, and he wishes to prove this with his own hypnosis routine. He recruits Gus, and they sit down, and smoke starts to fill the room. They're creating this atmosphere. This is the kind of atmosphere that is actually like a part of the show and that they planned for. So Jack even acknowledges it. He's like, where there's smoke, there's probably a smoke machine. Haig begins this routine by taking out his pocket watch. He waves his hand in front of it to make it spin faster and faster until it becomes a spiral. This was eye candy to me, honestly. This was very effective because I like rewound this scene like a few times just to watch it over and over again. How like it's helped also by the visual fidelity that I don't think we're talking nearly enough about. Like we mentioned at the beginning of the film, mostly due to like how the sound fidelity doesn't really match the visual fidelity. In this scene, it works though. And I feel like I envision this scene to be better in my head, but every time I watch it, I still love it. I'm easily I'm easy to please with stuff like that. Everyone stares into it, and a flash appears, and he puts it away. It's like a camera flash, the classic light bulb camera flash. Puts away the pocket watch. He then asks Gus to explain his vermophobia, which is the fear of worms. Haig tells him that he doesn't realize he's in a deep trance and that when he snaps his fingers, he'll be in his control. Haig snaps his fingers and Gus freezes. Strange sounds start to occur, including the theremin. This was a way better use of the theremin than what happened before. Gus claims it's hot and takes off his jacket. He starts to itch himself when Haig points out that he's bleeding. He pulls out a worm from his neck wound. He starts to freak out and says there's more inside of him. He unbuttons his shirt, rips his stomach open, revealing more worms that starts to pour out onto the floor. Haig winks at the camera after this. He then snaps his fingers again, but nothing changes. Lily starts to laugh. A giant worm protrudes from Gus's eye. Amazing practical effects here. Like classic B-movie, like schlock, treated with respect and is just really, really cool. Like at the end of the day, it's just cool.
Yeah, no, it's this is
dope.
such good. I don't know why. Like, yeah, why does that work for me? But the electrical, maybe it's just the craft of the scene.
It's the
of
craft,
the way
yeah.
it's
Like
built.
the
It
man hours
builds.
and
Oh, just the way that, like, you have these characters with different wants. Jack is in the background the whole time, kind of chiding. Haig is up to something, but you don't know what he's about to show off. And then the moment where they, because you're kind of with it as it's happening, you know it's part of Haig's thing. And then the moment he snaps his fingers and it's not working, you're kind of convinced, like, oh shit, this is like something's up. But even that is just,
well, he's still
I think just
fucking with
the
it because
ups and
that's not the sign that breaks everyone from their trance.
right.
But you associate that with breaking someone from their trance, and when that doesn't work, you're like, oh, that just convinces you more. Because before this, you're like, what the fuck am I watching? To your point before, like this works so much because it's out of control. Like this is the mic feedback stuff and, you know, all like the black goo vomit. The reason that's cheesy and this isn't is because like this feels more confident. This feels like a more confident scare.
Yeah. Like, stick with us. We got something good for you.
Yeah. Like,
roll with it.
It's not the filmmakers trying to scare you. It's the film like naturally playing out to me. Like,
yeah.
And it's,
yes.
you know, narratively fits, you know, all of that. And it's also just like a very, like the movie is, you know, despite some minor hiccups, like the movie is like earning your trust at that point. And with me, like I'm fully in it. Like I'm fully in it. So like this just works so well. And like, I don't know. I love like you love practical effects, so this is great.
Yeah, it's so good. This was the exact moment where I said to myself, "Man, I wish this movie had just committed to whatever this was."
That. Yes, yeah.
Earlier, so that, you know, instead of this being like, you know, this was stuff like this was happening a little bit more at the halfway point.
After that, Haig finally says the words. He says, "Dreamer, here, awake," and everything returns to normal. Everyone breaks out of the trance, confused. Haig explains that he did the same exact thing that June did with more imagination. Jack tells Leo to get the video guys to play back the last bit. This begins a fucking fantastic segment of this movie where they're literally just like going back and replaying footage. Things start to get revealed to you. Like, at this point now, it's like that is a great way to, you're like preparing for the scare now with this film.
It is funny that they never explain how the fuck he did that.
I have I have my thoughts. There's a picture-in-picture view of everyone reacting to the trick being played. Jack asks if the audience saw worms, and there's a mixed response. And you're like, what the fuck?
Right, it didn't work on everybody.
Yeah, June promises that she didn't hypnotize anybody. We see what actually happened now, like an objective view, and it was all fake. Like, Gus was in this trance, and there was no worms popping out. He was just pretend like it was just like he thought there was, but we're seeing like exactly what Haig wanted us to see. I think what's going on here is like we're supposed to be part of the audience, right? Like that's what we were saying even before this scene happened. Like you feel like you're a part of, you know, night owls, and that's what the movie is portraying. So that's what you're seeing. But now, you know, so when Gus is put in the trance, you are also put in the trance. So you become more like an active viewer than you do normally in movies, you know? And this is also like very impressive just for found footage in general. Like, again, like the framing of this film is like this tape is, you know, was found and it was real. And so the scariest thing is like this illusion being played on you, realizing that it's fake is part of trying to convince you that this footage existed in the first place. After this is revealed, June promises that she didn't hypnotize anybody, suggests to Jack that they replay the footage from the Mr. Wriggles segment, but June begs him not to. Jack says that Cleo James is standing by to play them out. You know, they're about to end the show, but maybe they should bring her back at a later date. June tells Jack that they're leaving, but Lily begs her to stay so that everyone knows the truth. The segment plays exactly as it did. A low drone starts to come in, actually. Jack notices a glitch and tells the crew to rewind a few seconds. He directs them to start going frame by frame until he sees Madeline appear behind him in the frame. This is the best bit of acting here, I think, from Dastmalchian, because we're seeing them frame by frame.
His reaction.
And we're seeing his reactions, and he has this look of like, this is the most he's been convinced, I feel like, at this point, even before he sees Madeline. He looks like totally freaked out, and you see it in his face. Because you see it, like he says it. He was hypnotized by Haig, and now him seeing this footage and that footage being real that fucks with him. And then the Madeline appearance is the topper, you know?
Yeah. No, that reaction is what you hired this man for.
Exactly. He's so
Like
good.
he's so good at looking
I want to see him.
completely
He's got to
broken
be in.
down.
He's got to be in more horror movies after this.
Oh, definitely. He should be.
Hig accuses Jack of setting everything up. He still doesn't believe anything. But Jack freezes up. Jack is like comatose for the remainder of this film, pretty much. He calls him a cynical, depraved genius. Haig does. Haig calls him a cynical, depraved genius. Lily starts to convulse, and more static interferences can be heard. Jack asks for some help. He's the way he delivers it. He's like comatose completely. He's like, he can't. He still like cares though. So he's like, the way he delivers this line. He's like, can someone? He's like still looking at the camera too. He's like, someone come get some help. It's really it's a great performance. He's then shocked by Lily, and the studio starts to fall into chaos with the lights out of control, and electrical flares everywhere. When the lights come back on, Lily is shooting electricity everywhere, and it kind of like she has superpowers at this point. And that's exactly what it looks like. And Jack begs Leo.
Yeah, she's
literally doing storm
Star
shit.
Wars.
Yeah. Yes. And this is the thing, though. Like, I think I've said this to you before, not on mic, but off mic. I've said this before. I know this is the 1970s and not the 1980s, but imagine like 1980s John Carpenter static electricity effects. You have like an idea of what that is. More notably, like Star Wars, when they shoot, fucking electricity out of their hands, specifically in like Return of the Jedi, not in the newer films. That's a specific lightning effect that I think they should have used instead of this, because this looks way too like this is a CG. Obviously, it's not great CG, and it looks way too modern. This looks like a Netflix original at this point. It's like a different movie is now playing.
Yeah, it doesn't fit the movie that.
Yeah, and this is what they decided. This is the climax of this thing, and I feel there's still good parts of this, especially with like Haig with the check, and
Haig immediately getting on his knees and saying he's going to be a Satanist. It's just like
I pray to you now, and Gus going, the power of Christ compels you, and it doing nothing, and his neck is snapped backward and he falls through the table. Like that's like the deaths, the way the deaths are actually portrayed.
Back to the line where he's like, my wife likes my head the way it is on my shoulder.
Yeah. It's perfect. That stuff is good, but like the and even June's death too, where June is in the air and her throat's being choked by the sort of emblem that she uses on Lily. And that like cuts her throat and she starts bleeding out everywhere. These are like good horror deaths, but it's not as effective. It's all kind of undermined by the glowing girl,
Yeah.
I do like that.
You could have almost have done.
I do like that he says
death.
abracadabra though.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, it's overdone. It's like overdone.
It's overdone. It doesn't stop there though. I mean, they do get like they do cut to the audience and they're all running for the exit. They're trying to portray that chaos. It's done better in Ghostwatch, but this is a completely different movie though. I don't think that's completely fair, but it's still not doing the movie any solids.
Yeah, no way.
The last thing that we do see, and this goes this transitions into what I'd say is like the epilogue of this film. It's funny that there's no before that though. It's funny that there's no death scene with Leo. You think if there's like a guy that maybe like it's all the people that die are the people that besides Haig. Like, you don't want to see June die. You don't want to see Gus die, but they're the sacrifices. They're trying to it's more effective if you see them die. But, part of horror too is like seeing the guy, you see Haig immediately, like that he's going to get it. And I thought that of Leo too. Like, oh, what's Leo's death going to look like? But he doesn't. There's no Leo death scene. Leo survives the whole thing.
He just runs out.
Leo grabs Jack. And they head backstage, but him and Jack and Lily share a look before Lily is like now telekinetic. Like, I guess the demonic powers are controlling the cameras now. It looks, we're going to talk about Chronicle. Do you know how in the end of I don't know if you've seen Chronicle. Obviously, that's another movie we're going to talk about. But the ending of Chronicle is like they're just using multiple camera setups now, and it just looks like a movie. It doesn't look like found footage. This part's the same. I feel the same way about this part, where it's like they're kind of betraying the concept a little bit, and now they're just showing you a movie. I think that's ultimately what I dislike about the ending here.
Feels like it's a movie that takes a long time to build up, and what it builds up to is kind of confused.
Underwhelming. Yeah. We now start the epilogue of this movie, though, and I want to get your thoughts on the whole epilogue first, because basically it's a trip. So obviously the camera cuts, it zooms in on Lily and the camera cuts. It cuts to this station difficulties title card. Actually sticks with it for a pretty long time, but then it just replays. This is the part I don't like. It replays, moments of the show Night Owls in the past, but now Jack is in it and he is aware of everything that's happening. And there's like a Dutch angle to it. It's off. We see for the first time like a non-objective camera like shooting Jack from the back as the audience looks at him. We're now seeing like a modern film being shot, basically. The premise is, kind of betrayed here. I know what it's trying to sell you on, but I don't really know why this is a found footage movie then, Because, with the effort they put into the backstage stuff, that's kind of my main complaint is they didn't really play that up all that much. Like, to me, the way and I hate doing this, like the way I would have done it, but like what I envision is like an unknown like camcorder filming the backstage segments while the characters are wearing, lavalier mics, and we're only hearing what they're saying, but they're kind of obstructed by other things because it's actually trying to sell you that they're talking in private,
Right. Yeah.
And like I'm trying to think of an example. If you watched that Beatles documentary, Get Back, like that's kind of what I envision. Like that is now like the definitive like backstage drama stuff because that's awesome.
It's more innocuous.
And this movie didn't need to be like
catch this.
This movie didn't need to be like completely realistic either. But the thing that it comes up with to me is just way less imaginative. And then you have this epilogue, which just kind of throws it all away, So that's why the movie just doesn't really leave me with the best impression at the end of it. Even though I was like loving it up to a point,
Yeah. Also, what it builds to is kind of like obvious, I guess.
Yeah.
Maybe that's just tough from like being somebody who's seen a lot of movies and consumed a lot of stories, but it feels like its ending is like kind of obvious.
Yeah.
Unsurprising, retroactively reflect more poorly on the stuff that came before, because it's like, okay, well, why did we take all that time to build up to this?
Yeah, it just didn't really. It showed me their hand, and I would rather them not. But we get Jack, like he's basically reliving all these things. Like he was reliving, his wife being on the show, reliving all these things. He's reliving, the deal he's signing with the UBC and Cavendish, and then it cuts to a new ritual being shown at the Grove, and or is supposed to represent the Grove. The guy in the skeleton costume. I thought the guy in the skeleton costume was like supposed to be a guy that was revealed to be important later on, but he's just just a guy in a skeleton costume, and he's a part of, the ritual basically of the Grove. We also see Sander Diabo. Nothing about this ending is literal. I want to make that clear, and I'm not buying it as like a literal thing that's happening. But like it also like this is supposed to be part of the tape, and I could see this as like being.
Is it?
It's because the tape. I mean, it cuts to like the station difficulties, but like then it shows you this. I think it's meant to give you the impression that the tape is haunted, and it's showing you whatever it wants to now at this point. Like this reads
I felt
to me,
more like reality and the analog tech were blending together.
Yeah, it's creating analog horror, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Merging found footage into analog horror, but not super elegantly, I think, or super articulately. It's kind of like, I said this about Skinamarink too. Late Night with the Devil feels like the beginning of a creepypasta, where the story is someone describing what they saw on this, old late night TV show taping that was never uncovered until now. So yeah, nothing's really literal here. We see Jack entering his wife's hospital bed now. We switch aspect ratios back to how the set was basically. As she tells him to kill her with the sacrificial dagger that's sitting beside him. Basically, after that, he breaks out of his trance, and it's revealed that he has killed Lily, and everyone's dead. And the last words spoken by Jack are, "Dreamer, here, awake." So how this ties to the framing of this film is like there's another illusion at play, and now we're being, we're still under some kind of spell or illusion as the viewer, and Jack is as well, and he's saying "Dreamer, here, awake" because he's trying to break out of this nightmare, but it's real. So that part of it I do like, and I like that that's the last thing that leaves you with. You're like, oh, that's a nice open-ended way, vending off the film, but also it doesn't really forgive to me the shoddiness that it's all treated with. I do want to say though, is it fine that this movie kind of breaks its rules?
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the problem. I actually don't think that that's the problem, that it breaks its own rules. I think that it doesn't.
Agree.
I think the reasons why it does that are not well motivated, or as well motivated as they could be.
As it could be, yeah. No, I totally agree there. For me, that's more. I mean, in the realm of like found footage, it makes me think less of this as a found footage film, but I think more highly of it when I just see it as a regular horror film.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, after a certain point, I kind of stopped. Literally while I was watching the movie, going like, "This is not okay. Don't think of this as like found footage. This is just a movie."
Now we're in movie territory, and I feel a little disappointed by that.
Exactly. I'm disappointed. I try to make a habit of going with the flow of like, okay, I have doing the thing or experiencing the thing, and it's different from what you anticipated. I know some people have a really hard time getting over that. I'm not one of those people. Mm-hmm. I usually try to just go with whatever is put in front of me.
Yeah.
I think
engaging with the film as intended.
It's harmed by the fact that as a movie, it's not like a super great movie.
It's not a super great found footage movie. I think it's an above average horror movie though.
Yeah, above average.
And it's elevated by the performances and just the setup and the conceptually, it's how it's elevated.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's it. That's Late Night with the Devil. I'm glad that we're finally able to talk about this film. So it's a movie I can see myself rewatching over and over again. Just even despite its flaws, it's fun. Like it's really good. Fun time to watch with your friends. Like, oh, you haven't seen, like, if you have a friend that hasn't seen it before, you've seen it. You're like, oh, this is maybe a good movie to watch with your buddies and just have a good old time with it. But yeah, there are some parts that I think you could have elevated it as I don't want to say elevated it, but parts of it I I have in my head a better movie, basically. But whether or not, that matters to you, is completely subjective. My only frame of reference for a movie like this is Ghostwatch and like other documentaries that I've, seen. Like I mentioned, Beatles, like other things that you watched maybe could have been more influenced this film a little bit more because, I see the Ghostwatch influence obviously, but like the only other influences I see are like actual late night talk shows and not much else. Even they don't play with that as much as I think I really wanted it to. So at the end of the day, yeah, I do really enjoy this film. When I watch it, I'm engaged with it. I'm immersed in it, but it has noticeable seams.
Yeah, like I probably wouldn't rewatch it myself just because more likely something, like if I'm going to rewatch something, it would probably be a movie I'm more hot on
Yeah.
if I'm not watching something new.
And there's also the AI shit that we shouldn't.
Yeah,
we shouldn't
oh my
revisit.
God, the
we
AI
should not.
stuff.
I don't want to go back to this.
Sure. Not one more time.
How about we bring it around?
Bring
it around. Don't use it. Hire good artists and fucking, all that. Especially if you're on a indie horror film that's supposed to be, the spirit of the whole thing in general. It's only going to get worse though. But at least we have this as
the AI scenario. Oh yeah.
We have this as a scale, I'd say.
A warning.
And we need this as a scale. We need it. So anyway.
Yeah, this is the safe version of it.
The safe version. Yeah, this is the light discourse, late night with the devil.
Diet.
Yeah. But yeah, this has been Dark Static. Thank you guys for listening. Again, I know I promised last week that, or last time on the show that we'd be covering Blair Witch. I probably cover Blair Witch 2016 next time. And yeah, I'm looking forward to that show. I know there's some other found footage movies out. Blair Witch will definitely be the next show. And then after that, we might do Ghostwatch as kind of a way to tie this all in, maybe. But there's movies out though that we can cover too. But yeah, you can follow me at Schiffer Audio on Twitter, Instagram, all that. You can listen to my audio drama podcasts, The Chain God, which is coming back soon, Blackwood, Inheritance, all that. I am also a writer. I write articles for Major Hi-Fi, reviewing high-end audio equipment, mostly headphones, and doing some lists too. I wrote a holiday Father's Day gift guide for headphones, so go check that out. Zach, what do you got to plug?
Still working on a game that I can't actually talk about that much at the moment, but we're moving into a GoFundMe phase. So I'm still plugging away at that.
Yeah, and again, if you guys want to, I've been hearing from you guys, actually. I've been getting some DMs on Instagram, which is cool. So I've heard from some of you guys, and I definitely appreciate that. Fucking DM me. Ask me questions about things, and I'm happy to respond.
Ooh, actually, yeah. If you want to DM me too, I would be totally down.
Absolutely. And while you're at it too, give this podcast a rating on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Give us a comment. Tell us what you think about this show and anything that we can improve, or what you guys want to hear, movies you guys want to see us talk about. There's a huge catalog I have that we'll get to them, I promise. Yeah, any other ways that you can follow this show on Instagram as well? You can DM that, or you can DM me on my Instagram. And yeah, give us some feedback. But yeah, anyway, this has been another episode of Dark Static, and listen to us next time where we discuss Blair Witch.